It's disgusting.
It's beautiful.
Oh, man.
It's supposed to be around.
Jesus Christ.
Welcome to For Your Amusement, a theme park podcast that aims to exhaustively evaluate the world's most popular theme park attractions to determine if they are world-class. I'm Ryan Bergara.
I'm Byron Marin.
And for this episode's featured attraction, we skip over the pond to discuss Nemesis Reborn at Alton Towers in Alton, England. And joining us in the alien invasion, or I guess the beast invasion, is Mike from the party from YouTube. Welcome back to the pod, Mike. Good to have you again.
I'm so happy to be back here. This is so exciting.
No, Mike is here remotely. He's not in the studio. We weren't blessed with his presence physically, but we are here having it auditorily and over the interwebs. So thank you for joining us again. And as always, please like and subscribe to keep us alive if you're watching the video version over on youtube.com/@FYApod. Or if you're listening to the audio version, subscribe and rate the podcast 5 stars. And consider supporting us on our fourth wall, which is a different version of Patreon. You can join our fourth wall and become a park hopper, as we're calling it, or as Byron calls it, an FYA hole, by heading to fyapod.com. Not only will it help us keep this madness going, but you'll also get up to 3 monthly bonus shows in addition to the free main show you're tuning into now. And finally, fyapod.com is also where our merch store is, which Mike is actually wearing one of our shirts. I can't believe that's very nice of you to support. I feel bad.
Love
it. I wish we were, rolling in the merch that we could just send you one.
No.
We purchase our own merch, to be honest. To wear, we have to. No, thank you for doing that. I appreciate it.
It's a lovely shirt. Everyone should buy one.
You know what? The funny thing about that shirt is it's actually inspired by the Nemesis shirt that I'm wearing right now.
Oh, because of the embroidered front.
The embroidered front and the back. I was like, I love the Nemesis shirt so much. This is like honestly one of my favorite pieces of theme park merch I've ever bought. Luckily, I did not have to stand in the 90-minute queue that was there opening day. Let's get into Nemesis Reborn. As always, we have our guest pick the ride that we cover. And in this particular case, it's a little interesting because Byron has not been on this ride. So when it comes to the world-class tests, it's just going to be Mike and I. And Byron's going to be there holding court, essentially.
I'm excited to learn. I'm excited to hear about your guys' experience. This is a ride I've been familiar with since it opened in the 90s. As a little kid, I used to watch Travel Channel, and the Nemesis was often featured back before I even knew much about what went on the other side of the pond.
Yeah.
So it's cool that you guys got to experience it, and now I get to kind of get an idea of what I could be in for, or maybe some of our viewers and listeners can kind of get your impressions. And
well, you are a true enthusiast in the sense that you actually you followed the construction of this. So
casually, I know, we'll probably get into the history, but they had a retracking done. But it's essentially been a very popular and highly regarded roller coaster since 1994. And so for that, it only made sense that we'd get Mike here, as tempting as it always is to talk Disney and other, big domestic attractions. It makes so much more sense that I feel like we had to do this.
And I think let's toss it to Mike here. Mike, what about this ride made you want to cover it on the pod?
Well, kind of similar stuff that you were saying is I felt like I wanted to come on and bring something a little bit different.
Yeah.
And from what correct me if I'm wrong, guys, I believe this is the first fully international attraction on this pod. There's been Disney rides that are in the US and elsewhere.
That's true.
I might have a line written in the history segment that mentions that this is the first international ride of focus on this
exactly
podcast.
It's history for the podcast. I felt especially when it's called the world, is it a world-class attraction? We're bringing the world in, right?
That's true. It's the first international Juicy Sclusy too. It's only in Alton Towers. I just dropped my pen. Let me kick that. Where'd it go? Oh, fuck.
And I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here in regards to first impressions, but my first impression was seeing promo documentary type shows on this attraction here stateside. So I don't know if that's an early indication that this is it's a world famous attraction, obviously, but Is it a world-class attraction?
Well,
That'll be up to you guys.
The marketing for this was incredible for this ride. Even like the little kind of commercial that the marketing push they had for Nemesis Reborn, in which like a security guard went missing. That have you seen Percy?
What are those officers called again? Like the phalanx? That kind of sounds interesting.
No,
Phalanx?
phalanx.
Phalanx?
Phalanx? Oh, I don't think I double checked the pronunciation of this. Phalanx, I think.
I mean,
I hope it is.
I'm pretty sure it's phalanx. But you know, I could, you know, if I'm pronouncing it wrong, it's just because I'm American. I have
I don't have
that
an
to fall back
excuse.
onto. Mike, you have no excuse.
No, I should know this.
But let's hop into some first impressions. And Mike, did you actually? Your first impression is a little bit more important because you experienced Nemesis and then subsequently Nemesis Reborn. So, what was your first impression of both?
So, I'll be totally honest. I don't remember the first time I went on this, and it would have been about 14, 15. So basically, I went through a period where I was too scared to do any roller coaster that went upside down. I did Rock and Roller Coaster in what was, I think, MGM Studios at the time.
Yeah.
I got too scared and then refused to do any for years. And so it was one where it was Alton Towers that I went to for the first time and braved upside down roller coasters. But I didn't brave Nemesis. I did what was Corkscrew, which is now gone, and the flying coaster, which is now called Galactica. And those were the two I braved. So the next time I went, I did all of them. And this is going to sound really bad for people who obviously know of Nemesis as this iconic roller coaster. But as someone who was never like fully connected into knowing what coasters were popular, I was genuinely a bit surprised when I found out it was the fan favorite like a few years ago when I started like researching. I was a bit like, oh yeah, I guess it's good. But to me, it wasn't like the iconic one at Alton Towers at all. And it's a weird thing that almost going through the whole process of the changeover has really made me appreciate it.
Yeah.
And appreciate what made it special and what makes it special now. That whole process is kind of not to, I guess, spoil all my opinions of Nemesis Reborn, which I really, really like, but it also made me retroactively understand why it was so iconic and beloved in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's also like really brave of you to admit that because like sometimes and I don't know if this is similar to you guys, but when you are, obsessed with theme parks like we all are, there are times when there are certain attractions that you just don't quite understand why people like them the way they do. And then that passion actually is kind of almost like an invitation for you to jump in the rabbit hole yourself. And then that's the way in. And then all of a sudden now you are passionate about it. But I feel like sometimes when people, and I've seen this sometimes in the theme park community and also just fandoms in general, when people aren't there from the beginning, it's like looked down upon, which I always think is so strange. Like I don't understand that. So it is really cool to be able. It's cool to be able to come in later. Yeah, gatekeeping is not my favorite.
It's really not. And I think there's an issue also with theme parks is it inherently takes longer to experience more of it because you physically have to get there.
Exactly.
It costs money, and so I always feel like, especially in that, like it gets a bit weird. I think when people are like, "Oh, how many roller coasters have you been on?" and look dismissively if the answer is 25, because that person could be still, have a lot of interesting thoughts and insight. Especially, I think, going on a certain type of coaster for the first time, I love seeing it through people's eyes, and obviously that was so much fun. Ryan, when we went to Alton Towers, to get to see some of the rides that I've known, as far long as I remember, through your eyes for the first time.
That's true. I guess that's a good segue into my first impression of this.
With the terrifying nature of today's featured attraction, you're probably going to need all the help you can get when it comes to getting a good night's sleep. And why not start with your bed sheets? Traditional bed sheets can harbor more bacteria than a toilet seat. It can lead to acne, allergies, and stuffy noses. And, it's just gross. Miracle Made offers a whole line of self-cleaning antibacterial bedding such as sheets, pillowcases, and comforters that prevent up to 99.7% of bacteria growth and require up to 3 times less laundry. Using silver-infused fabrics inspired by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, no matter the weather. So you get a better sleep every night. Miracle sheets are also luxuriously comfortable, without the high price tag of other luxury brands, and feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels. So stop sleeping on bacteria. Bacteria can clog your pores, causing breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. Go to trymiracle.com/FYA to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo code FYA at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/FYA and use the code FYA to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/FYA to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. Now back to the show.
So Alton Towers was pretty much my first, I want to say, true regional theme park experience. I know Knott's Berry Farm technically is that, but I never considered it that. I love Knott's Berry.
Six Flags.
What about Magic Mountain?
Six Flags, I don't know. I guess technically those would be regional, but because SoCal and Orlando are such theme park capitals of the world, it just felt like they were... I never looked at it as like Disneyland and then here are these regional theme parks, Six Flags and Knott's Berry Farm. I always just looked at it as like, here's 4 gates I could go to, between that and Universal Studios Hollywood as well. And it's like, oh, I love theme parks. I could go to all 4 of these. I never like diced it up into little groups. So like regional theme parks, that idea, that never really occurred to me until, honestly, I went to Alton Towers, because I've never been to Cedar Point. I've never been to any of like the major regional theme parks, over like in on the East Coast. Alton Towers really opened my eyes to how amazing a regional theme park can go. In fact, it's the reason why I went to Canada's Wonderland when I was down there touring for Ghost Files. Alton Towers was a fantastically themed park. I thought it was pretty cohesive between almost all the rides, but in particular, I had no idea what Nemesis Reborn was. All I knew about Alton Towers was they had the Wicker Man. And because like I had seen it on I forgot what it's called, the phobia of giant things. I don't think it's
I remember you telling me this word.
It's more scientific sounding. It's not gigantophobia or some shit like that, but it's something like that. And Wicker Man's always on those lists, along with like the giant Godzilla that you could zip line through in like Japan. But it's there. And so I knew of Wicker Man. And so when you were explaining to me in very Charlie Day crazed fashion why Nemesis Reborn was the most important in terms of lore when it came to this park, I was like, Mike's out of his mind. I think he's had a couple too many beers. And then we walked. And we did have a few beers. And then we walked into the land and I was just blown away.
It's like a zombie, like an apocalyptic zombie theme almost.
Just truly blown away by the level of cohesion, not just in the rides theming, but in the lands theming. Like the whole Forbidden Valley theming is so committed to this idea of this creature and how it has affected all the attractions in the land. I wish theme parks would do this more, where there would be a storyline and several attractions in that land tell that exact same story. Like, of course, there's things like Adventureland where they're all loosely adventure themed, but they're not telling the actual same story, where you have crossover, where like in this land you have Nemesis Reborn, which is the big coaster, but then you also have the walkthrough attraction, which is incredible.
I'm so glad you loved that. I thought you were going to.
Subterra is incredible.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, was that always incredible? Or because I know they did a refurb on that, right? Because it closed in like 2015. Right?
Yeah, so it closed around then. So it's almost essentially the same experience. All the changes are relatively minor, from my understanding, just a bit of a refresh. I think what has changed is essentially expectation, which is when it opened, there's a problem when I guess I would call it a B ticket, a C ticket. I don't know. Obviously I
would call it a B, dude. It's pretty good.
Yeah. It's a very sort of secondary attraction, but for what it's trying to do, I think it works really well. But I think when it opened, people just had these like incredible expectations which it didn't live up to, and then I think at closing, then suddenly everyone was like, it was so good, and I was like, I remember being one of the only people who liked it when I was, you know, a teenager or whatever, going on it the first time, because I found it absolutely terrifying. I've only just started doing scare mazes the last year or so, and I sort of accidentally ended up in something that was quite close to that. But yeah, no, it's purely it's not a different experience versus it. It's just different expectations, I think, that's changed.
But even like there's a flat ride in Forbidden Valley called Ripsaw that is also themed after the Nemesis creature. It's about a piece of shrapnel that got tossed from the pit. That's what the lore is. Like,
is that that's the pirate ship?
No, the pirate ship is Blade. There's Ripsaw, which is like that like weird like kind of spinning kind of thing. That's supposed to be a piece of shrapnel from the Nemesis.
So that doesn't exist currently. I can't remember when they got rid of it. No. You just hallucinated that you saw that.
Oh man,
it's so. But what they've just announced is they're re-adding a top spin next year, which is themed to Nemesis called. I've forgotten the name of it now. But there is a top spin coming for that land, which is going to have a link to Nemesis.
Maybe a better one, because I just saw pictures
maybe a better
of Ripsaw,
one.
And I was like, I thought that was hilarious.
I think the new one is going to be like more explicitly tied in, and it seems to have like a sort of almost like green aesthetic to it, which I think is quite interesting because that's going to be a different color scheme.
That'd be awesome. Honestly, I was just so overwhelmed by the theming in the land. It's totally possible that I thought I saw something and I didn't see something, but like really the main two are Subterra, which is the walkthrough attraction, and then obviously Nemesis Reborn, and then the ride itself. I mean, the coaster is incredible. It's a terrain coaster, like a true terrain coaster, and the level of commitment to theming, pretty unheard of. It for me at least. I mean, other than like some coasters I've been on at Knott's. And obviously Disneyland, you just don't expect to see that kind of theming on a coaster.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because I remember when you brought that up, I was like, that's so interesting, because to me, I don't get me wrong, I really love the theming on it, but it didn't feel like that significant a thing. And then I was like, actually, when you look at the US, it's kind of...
Look at Six Flags, yeah.
Yeah, well, my feeling, and obviously, Byron, I know you've done a lot of regional parks, so I know you've been to
just domestic, though.
Spread.
Haven't done international regional parks, so...
For sure, but I would say, personally, in the US, I feel like you've got your Disney Universal parks that are one end, like the really premium destination parks, and then at the other end you have your regional amusement parks. So they're now the same company, but Six Flags Cedar Fair, and you have very little in that in between space. So you have, like, I would say, Knott's. Byron, you've done Dollywood, right?
I did it this early this year.
So bad.
Yeah,
Dollywood,
like
Busch Gardens, Hershey Park.
There was another one in my head.
Good.
Oh, Silver Dollar City.
I have not done Silver Dollar City, but that's owned by the same people as Dollywood, and that's supposed to be incredible.
Yeah,
I can't wait. I want to go there too.
It's so hard. How do you get to Branson, Missouri? I don't like that's.
Yeah,
I looked into it once, and I was like, I'm not sure I'm ever going to get here. But you don't. But anyway, you could probably list all those parts that are in between. Well, I feel like in Europe it's very different, because I mean, obviously we do have Disneyland Paris here, but because it kind of like flopped, you don't really have that dominant force. And obviously all these parks developed kind of seeing Disneyland in America. So you have much more of what I would consider like a sliding scale in terms of that level of theming and investment and stuff. So at one end you obviously have your Disneys and your Eftelings and Europa parks, but then you have a lot of parks that are almost in that in-between space, sort of doing a bit, like having a bit of a go at this stuff. And Alton Towers I would put somewhere in that middle spread, but I think that's where I would put most European parks, somewhere in that middle bit. There's very few pure coaster parks, and there's very few like pure like Disney level amusement parks. Most are somewhere in between. So I think that's what I thought was quite interesting, because I never really thought about that before until you pointed it out, like, this is crazy, and I'm like, is it? And I'm like, well, yeah, in some respects, yeah.
Well, because even next to some of the other big coasters, like Galactica right next to it, which doesn't really fit in the Forbidden Valley theme, but
it doesn't.
But Smiler's out of control, but the theming is kind of, wonky. And then there's also Wicker Man, which actually does have a pre-show, which is pretty cool. But I still felt like the most cohesive theming was Nemesis, and that was the one I didn't even know anything about. So I was perfectly set up to experience it completely blind and have a very objective opinion about it. And it was the one of the trip that really took me off guard. But with that, why don't we get into some history, Byron?
Yeah. And before that, I do have a question.
Okay. Yeah,
So is it a cultural thing that just so many of the tones are much darker when it comes to like Alton Towers or...
Oh, yeah, it's a dark theme park. I love
it's-
that.
You gotta sing it, lady.
What is this? Hello? Hello?
Interesting. Oh!
Yeah, I mean, you see it in the commercials, the marketing. I'm sure that's what you feel while you're in the park.
Curse of Alton Manor.
I don't know if that's consistent with the marketing, but like, there's no park that in the United States that I feel like goes for such a consistent, eerie tone.
Well, but even
Yeah.
Disneyland Paris, they lean a little bit more into the horror aspects, I would say. Phantom Manor is a little scarier.
True, yeah.
Tower of Terror there, we've already discussed in this podcast, is much scarier there, in my opinion. So
Yeah,
I think the sensibility.
part of it's definitely a European versus US sensibility. I think also one thing, I guess, this is me, because it's an interesting thing you bring up, because to me that's so natural, because that's a lot of the UK parks have that sense of like fear and horror. But I think one thing that I've noticed is across especially the parks owned by the same company as Alton Towers Merlin in the UK, it's often like a really good marketing hook is this idea of like, this is really intense, this is really scary, this is really fast, this is really tall. So there's kind of that element coming in a bit. I'm not really sure though. I think it's probably just a bit of a different cultural sensibility, because to me it's more weird that it's not a thing in the US because it's so normal to me.
Yeah.
But their marketing is just eerie. Like, I feel uncomfortable watching your commercials. For like, I mean, Smiler's like probably one of the best examples.
That's the ride is so trolly. But even the commercial for Nemesis Reborn, the monster is pretty fucking scary. And Curse of Alton Manor, they push it. It's like a way scarier version of Haunted Mansion. Of course, it's not as like technically advanced, and it's a little more campy, but I loved it.
It's trying to freak you out for sure, more than I feel Haunted Mansion, which is more of a like quiet, unsettling. I personally would find Haunted Mansion more scary. It feels like, I don't know, you couldn't build Haunted Mansion now in a Disney park for sure.
I was laughing my ass off on Smiler. So fucking funny. That ride is so trolly. Okay, Byron, let's get into the history for this ride. While you could gather yourself here, I'm so excited to hear about this, because like most of the history segments, I have a pretty good idea of the history. This one, I'm pretty blind on. So like I'm kind of like sitting back with the audience here, just like, hell yeah. I'm not going to interrupt that much. I'm just going to be like, hell yeah, let's learn about Alton Towers.
Well, luckily you got your coffee. Hopefully I don't lull you to sleep.
No, I finished the cup.
No, I'm so excited too, because it's one of those things I kind of know it, but I definitely, you probably right now know more than me, which is kind of embarrassing when I've been there so many times. But
well, let's give this a shot. We'll collectively create a beautifully curated history segment. Yeah. To understand Nemesis, it's important to understand Alton Towers, which just so happens to be the first theme park to be covered on this podcast that is located outside the United States, which means I'm getting my money's worth with this one. Once upon a time, somewhere in the West Midlands of England, sat an old private estate which was to be known as Alton Towers. The estate's grounds opened publicly in 1860 by the 18th Earl of Shrewsbury. The grounds would go on to host various forms of entertainment, from the acrobats to the lion tamers to, of course, their signature gardens. And by 1890, Alton Towers was pulling in crowds of roughly 30,000 to experience these special offerings. By 1924, the Shrewsburys sold off the entirety of Alton Towers, ending their 700-year run of the land. It was sold to a group of local businessmen, which went by Alton Towers Ltd. And although the Ministry of Defense would step in and close the grounds during World War II in order to utilize it as an officer cadet training camp, Alton Towers Ltd. would regain control and begin introducing new attractions. In 1980, Alton Towers opened Corkscrew. My mouth is dry.
I will say when we went there, it was me, you, and Josh touring the actual tower estate, and I remember him telling me some of this.
Yeah, he knows a lot of the history and stuff, and I remember there being like, cool, awesome, I'm learning stuff today as well. But yeah, he's a massive Alton Towers fan, so it was great to have him to be able to give some of the information I would have liked to give you if I knew it.
Which shout out to Josh, by the way. He actually got me an Alton Towers hat, and he made some artwork for the show as well. That's incredible. You could check out. But I just remember walking around the grounds there and being kind of shocked that it was an actual historical site that they happened to build a theme park around. Which is something.
And it's a shame because there's a really good attraction that has been shot most of this year that is built partly into the towers themselves.
Wait, what?
And uses a fictionalized version of the history to tell it.
That's
and
cool.
It made me really sad because I was like, this is the most Ryan attraction here.
Wait.
But if you guys ever come back, like that, I think you would really, really like it.
No, I definitely want to come back because I also want to go to Thorpe because that's where Hyperia is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to get on that too.
Well, to Josh, apologies if I am shitting the bed here, but in 1980, Alton Towers opened Corkscrew.
You can't say corkscrew.
Corkscrew. Do you want me to say this line for you?
Yes. In 1980, Alton Towers opened Corkscrew, a steel looping coaster by Dutch manufacturer and current Disney darling Vekoma. By this time, Alton Towers was considered to be a bona fide theme park, and they showed no signs of slowing down their development of roller coasters. Following Corkscrew, the 1980s welcomed the enclosed coaster Black Hole, a Wild Mouse, and who could forget Minnie Apple, their 1983 Wacky Worm. But things got real for Alton Towers when they inherited a classic Schwarzkopf shuttle loop coaster, which they ultimately called Thunder Looper. Considering that this shuttle coaster stood at nearly 140 feet tall, now would probably be a good time to note that Alton Towers abides by a treetop rule, in which attractions are built at heights that don't breach the tree line and ruin the sight lines of local residents. That being said, Thunder Looper was only granted temporary permission, which would need to be reassessed and granted on an annual basis.
Just something really quick on that. I didn't realize that's why there was a height restriction, because in the States there's height restrictions for, I think, like aviation purposes, like there's like aviation code when it comes to like planes and shit like that. But for this, I didn't realize it was purely cosmetic. That it it's for the betterment of the community and not ruining their sightlines with giant coasters. And honestly, I feel like it's the best thing that could have happened to that park, because the fact that these coasters are just weaving through nature, and even the walkways of the park are just all kind of connected to nature. Like there's a massive garden in this park that's beautiful. Like you could legitimately go there just to hike. That was something that really stuck out to me and separated this park from any other park I'd been to. And, a reason why I want to go to even something like Dollywood, because Byron described it's like that as well. So it almost used one of its limitations as one of its advantages.
As thing is logistical problems that they find creative solutions
I always
to
love
get
that.
around.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that Nemesis, I'm sure we'll get into talking about it so well, is why so many of these attractions are iconic. Because when you are talking about the tallest roller coaster in the world, which obviously is a big conversation at the moment, because what is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think often it can be quite easy for a roller coaster to just focus on being tall, fast, and not actually be like creative and inventive.
Yeah.
And the nature of Alton Towers coasters is they don't really have many off-the-shelf coasters. Almost all of them have to be custom because of this bizarre limitation they have.
Yeah.
And it means you've got a lot of really interesting ideas it plays with because of that, because they have to do it to be creative. And I think that's one of the things that puts it on the map globally is its uniqueness. It's not going to have the same coasters naturally as other places.
No, I agree. There's no empty calories in this park. Like at all, like empty calories. I mean by that, like something that's just chasing billboard numbers, like tallest coaster. Right. That's this, or the most launches on a coaster. Like just obviously going for records. But Alton Towers doesn't do that. I feel like
I disagree on
does,
that.
though.
Smiler, yeah.
Smiler does though.
Smiler is 100% doing that.
Yeah, but that ride is like it's in on the joke. I feel like it's literally laughing at you the entire ride. Like that's what I felt like. I was like, this ride is hilarious. Like it understands exactly what it is. It's gonna shove it in your face. But everything else, like Galactica was like one of the coolest, just like most easy riding, just joy rides I've been through. You're just weaving through trees. It was magical. Now that might have been because of the beers I had, but I was truly on cloud nine.
It was my love for that ride as well, because I mentioned it was like one of my first upside down roller coasters that I genuinely loved. I feel like I went on and like convinced you to love it in a way that not a lot of people. But also, I believe that's one of, if not the first flying coasters. So it was like pushing innovation forward as a coaster. Obviously now they're kind of everywhere.
It was originally what, Air?
Yeah, it was called Air.
Air.
Before that.
And I
I
missed
feel like
that name.
this seems like a very dangerous flying coaster in the sense that people could go on it, feel comfortable, have a great experience, aren't addicted to thrills, and then go to Magic Mountain or
Go on Tatsu.
Flying Dinosaur and go through one of those pretzel loops and just fucking get their ass blasted.
Yeah, dude, it feels like an elephant's just sitting on your chest.
I remember going on. It's not obviously as intense as wait, what's the name of the one in Magic Mountain again?
Tatsu.
Tatsu. But what's the one at SeaWorld? Manta?
Manta's
remember going-
a blast.
Oh, I see. I really didn't like it when I went on it because I think I was still relatively young, and I was like, went on it being like, I love air. And
But it
then I
has
went,
no.
so
That's
intense.
the thing, though. Like Manta fucks. It's got the pretzel loop. It's like that's a signature move for a lot of these flying B&M flying coasters.
Yeah,
And-
but I quite like the gentleness of
I do
Air
too.
/
I loved
Galacta.
it.
I mean,
like
maybe I'm
cruising.
a wimp, but and I like one of my favorite roller coasters, probably top 3, is Fly in Fantasia-land, which
Oh
again,
man.
I've had a lot of people go, "Oh, it's a family coaster." I'm like, okay, I like family coasters. Deal with it.
Sometimes
Like,
it's
I
nice
love
to
it.
cruise around. You know, it's kind of
Yeah.
fun. You get your I like to thrill and I like to cruise.
Especially on a flying coaster. I feel like when I picture like the fantasy of flying, I'm going like, wee.
Yeah, through trees,
Ah.
weaving through trees. It's incredible.
It's funny you bring that up because Tatsu, the entire ride, I'm like bracing for that pretzel loop that
Yeah.
happens about 3/4 of the way. So like
Yeah.
you're enjoying the graceful beginning of the ride, doing these nice little, 0G rolls and stuff. And you're just like, yeah, I'm flying. This is beautiful. But in the back of your head, you're like, oh no, the pretzel loop's coming.
I can't wait for
Manta kind of hits you in the face with it at the really beginning. So then afterward, you spend the whole ride like, yay, like I survived it. And now I'm like coasting by the water and the cool stuff. So I think there is something to be said about maybe flying coasters should just do away with the I don't know.
I like the pretzel loop.
Enthusiasts are probably coming after me like, no, dude,
Nah,
don't
dude.
save my pretzel
No,
loop.
I like it. I like feeling like I'm gonna pass out. It's so good. Where were we, by the way? Oh, the tree line. Sorry, I
Yeah.
completely-
Hey,
so off
you
topic.
connected
I
you connected
apologize.
that better than I did.
Yeah.
And I will mention, I think there is, to wrap up this this deviation, I think it's interesting that you guys bring up that Alton Towers like doesn't really go for like these records, because John Wardley, the guy that ends up designing this ride that we're about to talk about right now, I remember hearing him in either like documentary or interview footage essentially saying, look, just going like all these other places are going for records. That's not interesting to me. Like like my job is to create fun.
Yeah.
And this is not an exact quote, but his job is like, I want to make a fun ride, not just a record breaking ride.
My basic objective is to give people fun. And there are lots of people that knock that. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with a bit of good, simple fun. And those people that set out to build the highest, the longest, the fastest, or whatever, end up probably with a very dull ride. And of course, next year, someone comes along and tops them.
So,
Well, Mike disagreed. I, as an outsider, that was my impression of the park. But that's also because I go to Six Flags Magic Mountain, and it feels like all they do is chase records, which is fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, there's a place for
Again,
that.
the way Merlin as a company operate is every time they have a coaster, it will always be either the UK's most
Yeah.
X or world's first, and some of the world's first claims they made over the years are like so funny because they're just really specific.
Yeah.
So, for example, Chessington, World of Adventures in the South, in the south of England, not the south of America, opened Jumanji Land with a roller coaster, but it wasn't the world's first Jumanji themed ride because there's already one in like Gardaland or something. So they had to be like the world's first Jumanji themed roller coaster, which is such a specific niche. Like it's like, oh, everyone was waiting for a Jumanji themed roller coaster specifically, or it's just always really specific things like
The world's
that they
first
claim.
looping yellow painted roller coaster.
Genuinely, they would do that. So I think that's it. But obviously, that's more the marketing per se than necessarily, and often it's really subjective claims, like the world's scariest roller coaster they've claimed multiple times, and there's no way of proving that. They just claim it, and normally have some sort of weird way of backing it up.
The designers and the marketers have very different objectives, and then it's
Whereas the designers and the marketers in Six Flags are going for the records, but as somebody who came in blind, I was kind of impervious to the marketing, so I was able to just experience the park at face value. Yeah, and I didn't
totally
feel like any of the things were like kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Not kishy, but kind of just like not even tropey, but just like. There's a word.
Empty calories was I think a good way of putting it. This sense of it's more about what it looks like from the outside than what it experiences. And
gimmicky. That's the word I was. That's the word I was looking for.
Or at least it does feel like the gimmicks in the park were intentionally trying to push things forward, like especially the Wardley designed attractions. So something like Oblivion was the world's first dive coaster, but it's not so they can say. Well, they can say it's a world's first coaster, but it was what can we do that's never been done before, which is a really exciting way of looking at that.
Yeah.
So perhaps the approach has shifted a bit from the 90s to the 2000s. I don't know if that took place over it becoming owned by Merlin?
Yeah, maybe, or maybe it's just me being older and more cynical.
Maybe. I don't know.
I'm sure that'll be appreciated by all the UK folks that are probably screaming at me right now. It's like, they go for it! They go for records too. Don't give them the credit.
Well, I mean, Smiler must have just been a mandate of, hey, we want the most inversions on any.
Smiler is so fucking funny, dude. We'll get in one day. Maybe
the only time
that.
I've enjoyed Smiler, Ryan, was riding it with you.
I was
never liked that
my
coaster.
Ass off. It was so funny.
It was so fun to ride it with you, and I was like, you know what? I get it now. I now have gone in with an appreciation.
I feel like I would hate
had.
the Smiler because I'm not a big inversion. I'm not like inversions are not what I get super excited about.
Same.
So if it's just flipping the whole time, I'm just gonna get dizzy and pissed off.
I thought I was crazy for thinking that, so I really appreciate Byron you saying that as like a coaster enthusiast.
I loved it
because I've always thought inversions, too many inversions, kind of put me off a bit.
If they're creatively done, and there's rides that do them very tastefully, but I'm airtime over inversions.
Oh, yes,
fair.
yes,
that's fair.
Yes,
that's fair.
I love an airtime machine.
All right, so back to the history of Nemesis. Once again, we left off on the tree line.
That's right, the tree line restricting the heights.
Yes.
Half an hour ago.
Just around the time that they acquired the Thunder Looper coaster, Alton Towers was purchased by the Tuso Group, and with that came a new team of creatives to handle the development of future attractions.
Sorry, is that how it's pronounced?
I have no clue.
Tuso.
Honestly, I Googled like Madame Tussauds is how it's spelled.
Is it the same company?
It's like Tussauds.
Yeah, it's the same company. Yeah, I've always heard it colloquially called Madame Tussauds, but now I'm worried I'm wrong.
Tussauds might be.
Pronounced...
That could be right.
Wait,
honestly, I could be.
If you were talking about the waxwork in America, would you say Tuso?
I called it Tussauds, but I pronounce things wrong prolifically. That is like my thing. I'm known for pronouncing things wrong.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I don't want to correct you.
I don't say wrong. I don't say full if I'm like, oh wow, I ate a bunch of food. I'm like, I'm full. I say I'm fool. Like I'm a fool. Like I'm a fool for saying Tussauds wrong.
Well, we have both pronunciations now in there, so.
So they were purchased by the Tuso or Tussauds group, whatever. Perhaps the most important of this group was legendary designer John Wardley. Initially, Wardley had cooked up an idea for a ride that involved a secret weapon being utilized by the military, and with that, the codename Secret Weapon was born. The original Secret Weapon was to be a roller coaster manufactured by Aerodynamics, who were at the time attempting to create a coaster model similar to Japanese manufacturer Togo's Ultra Twister. Unfortunately for Aero and John Wardley's team at Alton Towers, the tree line restrictions would cause them to hit roadblocks in the design. While an excavation team used explosives to clear space for the upcoming coaster, a new layout would be designed for what became called Secret Weapon 2, which would get quickly squashed after John Wardley visited Aerodynamics and rode the prototype, which he found to be boring, slow, and cumbersome. Meanwhile, a game-changing coaster being built near Chicago would capture Wardley's interest. Manufactured by Swiss company Bollinger and Mabillard, Batman the Ride at Six Flags Great America introduced a first of its kind.
It's the world's only suspended outside looping thrill ride. Park guests hang below the track in high-speed chairlift type vehicles, similar to what you'd find at a ski area, as they whirl over and around Gotham City.
The Alton Towers team would get a chance to try it out prior to its 1992 opening, in which Wardley left convinced that a secret weapon 3 was to come in the form of the B&M invert. And as they always say, the third time is the charm. Wardley would team up with Alton Tower marketing director Nick Varney to dial in the theme and storyline for Secret Weapon 3, in which they would supposedly come up with its official name while slamming down a bottle of Southern Comfort. Anyways, on March 19th of 1994, Nemesis would open officially at Alton Towers. It was considered by many to be the best roller coaster in the UK due to its intense elements, creative theming, and brilliant use of terrain, in which riders experienced whippy speed and unpredictability, all while staying beneath the tree line. The iconic coaster would keep thrilling riders for nearly 30 years before closing on November 6th of 2022. The end. Just kidding. It underwent a massive refurbishment which enhanced its theming in addition to swapping out its track and support columns to ensure another 30 plus years of shelf life. So about a year and a half later, on March 16th of 2024, Nemesis Reborn was born.
Again. There's a name in that somewhere. They could have gone with that as a rename.
That wouldn't have been as fun.
No, it wouldn't have been.
Anyone want to take a crack at the thrillldata.com average wait time?
Ooh, this is going to be interesting because I know the opening day line for Nemesis Reborn was insane, which is a fun fact later, but I don't know how much that would actually drag the average up, or pull the average up, rather. I'm going to go with... this is tough for me because I don't know. I'm not at the park often, but I would guess.
Now, I got 2 pages from this, a Nemesis and a Nemesis Reborn, but they're very close in average wait time.
I'm going to go 30.
So I remember distinctly, obviously, that day when it reopened, seeing how long the lines were, because at the time I was still in LA.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, oh, I've got such promo, and then I looked at everyone stood in the rain while I was
dude.
in Hollywood, and I'm like, I'm actually all right. But distinctly, I remember a friend of mine going 2 days later on the first Monday, and the queue being essentially non-existent.
5 minutes.
I don't think it's going to put... Yeah, I think it was 5 minutes, though. So I'm going to say 20. I don't think it's... I think other rides have worse queues because either they have a wider appeal because they're less intense or have lower capacity.
That's
so
the
I'm
thing.
going to guess...
The B&M inverts always have such good capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to guess 20.
So what we got here, according to thrillldata.com, is Nemesis Reborn 33 minutes.
Nice.
Although I recall that the original Nemesis was around 28 minutes.
Huh. Interesting.
Okay, Ryan just got right in the middle of both.
That's nailed it. I mean, I also saw the posted wait time, which is a fun fact for later, so we'll save that. Just a little quick trivia here. Do you guys know what the code name was for Nemesis Reborn? Because the code name for Nemesis was Secret Weapon 3. There was an actual different code name for Nemesis Reborn.
Well, I don't know. Alton Towers always does secret weapons, right? Did they deviate from that because this wasn't technically a new
I'll give you a
coaster?
hint. They definitely did deviate from that.
Okay.
I was about to say it didn't count as one of the secret weapons because it's still the same coaster. I feel like I would have heard it at the time, but I don't remember now.
It's relentless.
Okay.
That's a
Which is
very
kind of
apt word.
Kind of badass, to be honest. It is pretty relentless too, so I love it. I guess it does it for the history.
Man, that was a quick one.
That was a quick one, yeah. Let's that's for the history. Let's move into some fun facts. The ride is about 1 minute and 20 seconds long, with a capacity of approximately 1,400 riders per hour, a max speed of 50.3 miles per hour, falling from a height of 104 feet through actual terrain. And the ride originally cost $10 million when it opened as Nemesis in 1994, before being closed for retracking in 2022 and reopening in 2024 as Nemesis Reborn. I saw that this retrack was estimated to be at a cost of £3 to £5 million, and the manufacturer, as Byron mentioned, is B&M. The height being 104 feet, that's only because of what you alluded to in the history, which is the fact that they used actual dynamite to just blow into the terrain to create a giant asshole.
Isn't that so insane?
To build this fucking ride deeper so that it could get a little bit more drop. It's absolutely hilarious to me that they were just like, what's the solution? Why don't we just blow it up?
TNT,
I
baby.
find is-
Let's go.
What I find crazy is that at the point they blew it up, they didn't even know what they were building. They were like, we need a hole. We'll blow up the hole. And then they designed the coaster around
That's the thing. I think this
mess
was
they'd
like
created.
they were still developing it as the Aero coaster, I think, when they blew
Yeah.
this thing up.
Which is crazy because that's also what makes the ride so unique because there's these cavernous terrain features that you go through. And in fact, I actually read that they actually had hired somebody to make the terrain kind of a little bit even more closed in the caverns to kind of give you those near miss head chopper moments. But there are some really show-stopping moments on this ride that are only because of the fact that they use dynamite to clear this thing out. Also, just imagining like the wildlife being there, like a fucking snake chilling in his house, and then just gets blown up.
Oh no! Don't even think of that.
It's so
That's sad.
It's just kind of funny to think of this snake like, oh, what should we watch? When it just explodes because they blew up the whole thing with dynamite.
By the way, you got to tip your cap to John Wardley, who had the tenacity to, while this was deep in development as an Aero coaster, to go ride the prototype and just be like, nah, dude.
Nah, man.
we're gonna go with B&M. They have this new inverted coaster. This is the right ride type.
That was one of several nails in the coffin in Aero.
Yeah.
I honestly think.
I mean, when Aero's trying to replicate Togo, it's a bad sign.
Yeah. Also, one funny thing about the dynamite, too, is a lot of the boulders featured in Alton Towers apparently are from this original excavation. So, like, the chunks of rock that came out, they just repurposed as theming.
Yeah, I read the Katanga Canyon section is where like a lot of those rocks ended up,
It's
which
so
I'd
funny.
never noticed before.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
The original Nemesis traveled over 800,000 miles, aka 32 times around the world. The coaster has over 2,349 feet of track with 4 inversions, 2 of which are corkscrews, along with a 0G roll and a vertical loop. The ride delivers over 3.5 Gs of force, aka, for all you folks that are more coaster novices like I am, that's 3.5 times the force of gravity. And also, a 0G roll is a 360-degree inversion that occurs at the crest of a hill and continues as you descend, creating a weightless kind of feeling. Are you able to clock those when you're on the coasters, Byron?
Mm-hmm.
That's hilarious to me because I'm just
Like for
going,
example, Silver Bullet after the Cobra roll.
Yeah.
That's a 0G roll.
Nice.
Mike, you've been on Montu, correct?
Yeah, I would say Ryan the way to describe it because I was the same for ages. I was just like coaster go brrr, and I didn't
Coaster
really...
goes fast, I go wee.
Yeah, I go wee. But really what it is, if you feel yourself being pushed down into your seat, that's a positive G-force. And when you feel yourself being like lifted out of your seat, that's a negative G-force.
Yeah.
That's just when someone described it to me like that, I was like, oh yeah, I know what those things are. I know well, that's the difference.
So back to
okay.
the flying coaster on a pretzel loop, you're getting an insane amount of positive Gs.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, if you go over like a bunny hop and you feel yourself go, woo, that's air time.
I do love air time. The one thing I do always recognize is ejector air time. I don't think there's much on this ride, but that's usually my favorite element. This ride actually was Europe's first inverted roller coaster and the second inverted roller coaster in the world, as Byron mentioned in the history. The ride's backstory is elaborate, and depending on how deep you want to go into it, the lore is expansive. But in short, the backstory follows the story of a Nemesis beast or creature that apparently crash landed onto Earth and has been contained by a secret organization called Phalanx in a pit held down by the tracks of the coaster since 1994, only for it to slowly be breaking containment over time.
Nemesis closed in November 2022 by order of the Phalanx. They told us everything was under control. There appears to be a lot of buzz in the surroundings with teams working excessively to make sure everything is categorized correctly and that it's a safe place for us all to be. It appears now that Nemesis has been angered. People have traveled from across the globe to catch a glimpse of her new awakened state.
So one thing that's slightly different in Reborn is that originally the track in the original Nemesis, the story was that's the things holding it down, while I believe the track now is the creature itself.
Well, that would make sense, right? Because it's repainted.
Yeah.
Because originally it looked like a rusty white kind of...
So here's where
so it looks like steel trying to contain this beast, where now it looks like there's like veins that are painted along the side of this.
So I was seeing some discussion on this as well. So there's apparently the lore is in 1994... they or if you really want to go deep into it, let's just get into it. Apparently,
let's get into
this
it.
alien crashes into Earth, right? And over time, it's actually worshipped as a deity by all like the locals. And then eventually,
Because it didn't cross the tree line.
exactly, but the creature got a little annoyed. And so they realized in 1994, hey, we need to bring in the military here to calm this thing down and contain it. So they built the tracks to contain this creature, and it contained it, kind of. Then, in 2022, they realized it was breaking containment. So they redid the track, remade the cage for the creature. But in fact, what happened is the creature, in still pushing against it, fused with the track, essentially, is what I was reading. Now, I could be wrong. And like I said, there's a lot of... It's messy. Let's just call it that. It's that
There's
people
so
have their own
much.
interpretation of the lore, but
Kind of makes it more fun, though.
it does make it more fun.
Some call it lazy storytelling. I call it leaving a door open for...
Interpretation,
Yeah.
which I actually agree with. I think that's very, very smart.
I mean,
honestly,
I would disagree a bit on the lazy element because I think
I'm not
there's- and I
saying
think-
I'm not saying that.
Yeah, and I think I read that was an intentional aspect of at least the original Wardley design of the era. They were like, we've come up with all this backstory, and if you want, you can read it in a comic book, but almost they didn't want to give too much information. They wanted people to go in and piece together bits.
Yes.
The new version is a little bit more heavy-handed at like the exposition element. It's one of those things where I'm personally someone who like doesn't really care about that kind of stuff, which surprises a lot of people because I'm very much into those like Disney, Universal, Dark Ride stuff. But I just want to look at what's in front of me rather than read some website.
no, I thought the lore was pretty easy to understand, even just walking through the park. Clearly, there's some sort of giant creature. It has something to do with this coaster. I wasn't sure if the tracks were we were riding along the veins of the monster itself, or if it wasn't clear to me that the tracks were containing the monster, or that the track had fused with the monster. I just knew that there was a monster there, and if anything, we're trying to get away from it in some aspect.
Yeah, and I intentionally didn't tell you any lore before you went because I feel like that's how the experience should be. Because I know certain people, if they would have taken someone who like was flying from overseas towards the towers, they probably would have given like a dossier of like, you have to watch these videos and you have to understand who John Dalton is or whatever. Like, and I was like, I want almost to see how you find the experience going in with no context.
And they do a
'Cause
good job. I
remember the point where you turned around to me. I was like, "Oh, it's like an alien thing." I was like, "Yeah."
Well, there's like a little video kind of pre-show in one of the shipping containers in the queue. But also, if you go through the walkthrough beforehand, Nemesis Subterra, it does a decent job of explaining everything as well. One of the things I think that's the funniest about the lore is in the original 1994 Nemesis, the fact that they use these tracks to contain the creature, but it's kind of thumbing its nose at the hubris of humanity that they think they're so in control of the situation that they are allowing tourists to come ride the cage. Like, come ride the track. Like, they're encouraging that. I think that's really funny.
And that's kind of why I feel like I'm less interested in the lore, because you are going to eventually hit a certain point where, at the end of the day, right, we're on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And any reason that we're riding a roller coaster is inherently going to be stupid. So I'd rather not know whatever reason they've come up with.
Well, I think that reason's
just-
funny to be like, humans think they are in control of things, and they're not. And what funnier
that
way
the
to
official
represent that?
law?
I think that is. Like, what's funnier way to represent that than to be like, why don't we ride the cage of the monster? I think that's so funny. And if not, that's my interpretation, and I'm going to hold that as canon because I think that's incredibly cool.
You know what actually just occurred to me that I find really interesting is it kind of gives you more of an unsettling or authentic experience as if you're actually stumbling upon this thing.
Yeah.
Because any like weird discovery, whether you're out in the wilderness in life or like there, you feel a sense of danger.
Yeah.
Like, why am I going down this alleyway? What's gonna well, you don't have like a big backstory and lore that comes with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the rush. And then
I
you could kind of dig deeper over time. So I don't know if that was like your impression since you did not know any of the lore, or I mean, Mike, I don't think you knew much of the lore the first time you did it as well.
Definitely not when I did the original. I'd followed the Reborn like marketing and construction, but I didn't care, so I hadn't like learned it. I think for me, one thing that you just reminded me of, Byron, is like maybe like a comparable example. Did you guys watch Stranger Things?
Yes. Yeah.
I say like it's over. You know how the first season was so scary because you had no idea what was happening?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
later seasons are still like really fun and really great. But I personally found them less scary because we know the universe, we know how the rules work,
Too
we
familiar.
understand everything. Yeah. And that's how I personally find it, that I'm glad the lore is there to engage the hardcore fans. I think there's lots of really fun richness to that. But I do think the better experience is going in and not really know what's going on, but know they've put thought into this, that there's clearly a cohesive vision here, but you're not really sure why or what anything's happening. Personally, I think that's more interesting.
I think a lot of the fun is choosing to take that next step
Yeah. I agree.
to get to know it deeper.
Yeah, like you get your interest is piqued by like just being there and experiencing it and going, I want to dive into this a little bit more, so the next time I ride it, I have a deeper understanding. And each time you do that, you have a different experience on the ride as a result, which is nice. But moving forward here, this ride does feature pretty on it. Like we're going to talk about this later. It's honestly pretty elaborate theming for a coaster. There's a crashed helicopter. There's a bus that's also crashed. And there's also just general military-style paraphernalia just scattered throughout the queue. As I mentioned, there's a shipping container that has like a little pre-show in it, and it also has a piece of roller coaster track sticking out of it that, in theming, could represent the idea that the Nemesis creature has gotten to the shipping container and destroyed it. However, the reason why that track is there is apparently because when they retracked Nemesis Reborn, there were two pieces of track that were the wrong size, and they didn't know what to do with them, so they just kind of implemented it in the queue.
That's good. Because I was about to ask
true.
you guys. That was the answer though, because I was about to ask, because when they retracked Hulk in 2015, they actually took a piece of the old track of Hulk, and that's what the Hulk is like holding over his head at the entrance of the ride. So I was like wondering, is that an old piece of track?
No, it's they fucked up.
So yeah, in Alton Towers, when you enter the park, there's a piece of corkscrew that they kept there that you walk under, which is more comparable to the Hulk thing. But yeah, that there was rumors about that. I think from memory, I believe it was like rumored that it was like, they messed up and here's the extra bit of track, and I was like, maybe. But I was actually in the room when they confirmed it, because I went to there was like a nerd event I went to put by a really good organization called Attraction Source. I think they deserve a shout out because they put on, and it was like the project manager of Nemesis, and someone explicitly asked, was that leftover track, and he like told the story of it. But basically they had to like expedite the delivery of it. It sounded like such a nightmare to like manage the fact that you've got part of your track missing.
Did he acknowledge the dent?
There's a dent?
There's a dent in the track that's still there. And that happened during the construction of it, apparently, that it got bumped by a crane or something, but it didn't affect the actual rideability or safety of the ride, so they just left it.
I don't remember that being brought up, and I feel like I would. But
So-
I'm surprised someone didn't bring that up.
I read that online. I haven't been able to visually confirm this dent, but there are people online that say the dent is there. So there is a dent in this track at some point.
It's probably like they've probably written it into the backstory, that the Nemesis creature once got attacked by this person, and that's why, like, that's the original. I bet there's some lore that they've come up with.
That's the trick. That's why you got to have a giant monster in your roller coaster. Any defects, it's like, the monster did that.
Yeah.
And the monster was like, fuck that track. Like, let's make this track bigger. Apparently, the original Nemesis also had a roar-like audio quality when you would ride through it because the track was hollow. But but now they filled it with sand, apparently, to like lessen the noise contamination. Is that true?
Yep, that's correct.
That is true.
Damn, I wish I could have heard.
For example,
the roar.
Silver Bullet, it's got sand, I believe.
That's crazy.
Yeah, early, like the 90s B&Ms, they call it the B&M Roar. The original Hulk had it. Kumba still has it because that's not retracked. A great example, Ryan, is Riddler's Revenge.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the
Okay,
B&M
that's the roar.
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
Batman the Ride has it as well to
Yeah.
a slightly lesser extent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. You don't get it anymore on B&Ms. They're beautifully smooth and quiet. They've always been smooth, but I do kind of miss that roar.
I like the roar.
It's nice when it's on something like Nemesis or Hulk, where it fits so nicely with the idea of the coaster.
Yeah.
When they are about these monsters that are out of control, it's such a nice fit for that. But obviously, I totally understand.
And it's got to
especially-
increase anticipation, right? Because especially with Nemesis that is low to the ground, you probably don't see it right away, but you can probably, I'm guessing you'd hear it before you see it.
Yeah,
I did
think
read,
that's
though,
this.
that somebody said the roar is still there despite it being retracked, but I don't know. I don't recall that when I was there because Riddler's fucking loud. Anyways, there's also a giant animated Nemesis creature. Before it was like kind of a goofier eyeball and creature, but now this eyeball is an enormous 3D LED screen eyeball, and the creature also moves. There are parts of it that I wouldn't call it an animatronic, but it is animated. And I've also read that this doesn't work as well, but I've seen footage of it when the coaster passes. The spikes on top of the creature's head move kind of with fury, and then when it leaves the station, smoke shoots out of the creature. The station itself is actually themed to be the inside of the creature, which, like you could see, it's like the rib cage and everything. It's lit red, and it's also complete with its own scent. Did you know that?
Oh, I've not noticed it, but my sense of smell isn't great, so...
Yeah, apparently it's a custom ghastly smell meant to smell like kind of like rotting flesh, and it's made by a company called Aroma Prime.
I might have just assumed it was just someone near me smelt really bad.
Yeah,
So,
I don't recall this smell when we were there. Thank you. Very good, Mike. Unbelievable. But no, I just remember being blown away by the lighting of the station, and also just like the little smoke effects and everything. So... I don't know if it dawned on me that I was inside the creature. Honestly, when I was in there, I was like, oh, this is a cool station. Which I guess is more commentary on my lack of observational skills.
I guess that's the one downside of almost the eye photo op sort of moment not being, you don't see it again because you go in the other side.
Yes.
I feel like if you walked past that, you might make that connection easier, but it is, I believe, on the other side of the same building. Yes, it is.
The eye is great, too. It has 3 different modes: sleeping, waking, and then fury, which is...
Same.
Same.
Yeah, and I've used the fury mode too much in the last week. I need to do more of the sleeping and the waking.
I wish I was only in the sleeping one. It'd be great. The ride also has its own original score, which you hear throughout the queue, and also you can kind of hear it at the end of the ride as well. The whole land of Forbidden Valley, like I mentioned, is themed around this Nemesis creature, and we already kind of lightly touched on Nemesis Subterra, which is technically a separate attraction, but I view it as the unofficial pre-show for this ride, and you could treat it as such if you get on that first and then get on the coaster, which is how I would recommend it to people if they haven't done any of this before, because it perfectly sets everything up.
I'm so glad we did it that way, because I had that brainwave of, I feel like it would be really cool to do this first. And to be honest, if the queue was too long, I wouldn't have done it. So I'm really glad that happened, and it really feel like it helped your enjoyment of the experience to have that sort of dark ride adjacent experience first, and then do the coaster.
It was so cool.
I think together they work so well.
To have them link and tell pieces of a bigger story is so goddamn cool. I just wish more parks would do this. And I don't want to ruin Nemesis Subterra for all you folks, but yeah, it is a walkthrough attraction with a little bit more. So it's like a haunted house with a little bit more, and that's all I'll say because I don't want to ruin it. It's awesome.
You say that, right? Because I was so happy you didn't know the thing that's the surprise in there. In the in the episode you did with Defunctland recently, you did mention a surprise, and I was listening. I was like, Ryan, why are you saying this?
Did I ruin it? Oh no! Yeah. Well, you know what? Don't
go back and listen to that episode again.
They're gonna forget.
You know,
the black track is covered, as you mentioned, with hand painted Nemesis red veins along it. That's pretty cool. I don't know why I wrote this. Blade and Galactica don't really fit.
What?
It doesn't really fit into the Forbidden Valley theming.
Well, Blade, as of today, is dead. So
we're
one step closer to.
That was the oldest ride in the park too.
Yeah. So yeah, Blade's going, and it's heavily rumored they're going to do some redo of Galactica. So there will be.
Cool.
This year extracts a heavy toll.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, having it all fit into the Forbidden Valley theme, I'd be on board for that. I think that'd be really cool.
It's funny seeing people being really outraged about Blade, which is, a pirate ship going like it's Muppet Vision or King Dakar. It's really amusing to me.
Yeah.
Like, I totally get why those two people are really, like, have these attachments to. And when it's Blade, it's like, there's a lot of these guys.
Yeah, it's a flat ride. So, but, I get it. Nostalgia is a funny thing. And I have it for certain things. I bet you there's certain things in Disneyland if they moved it. No, I don't think I'd be that outraged, but I'd be like, oh, that's a bummer. As I mentioned, the lines for Nemesis Reborn on reopening day were insane. I saw a posted wait time of 270 minutes, and some were claiming that the line was even 5 hours long. And then it started raining later in the day, and people still waited in line until people told them to leave, which is crazy. Really, that's clearly this is a very beloved ride. There was even a limited 1,000 can Nemesis Nectar beer for those who were lucky enough to secure a can of the brew. And the gift shop reportedly had a queue of over 90 minutes. And luckily when Mike and I went, no such queue for either. It was pretty much like a 15-minute wait for Nemesis Reborn, and then the queue for the gift shop there wasn't one. And I was able to...
yeah, but wasn't it crazy that, because we went midweek in May,
yes.
Remember the gift shop at the front wouldn't let us in without queuing for something ridiculous?
Oh, yeah, that was weird. Yeah, because I wanted to buy an Alton Towers hat, and they wouldn't let me. And luckily, Josh was able to secure the hat for me later, and was nice enough to send it to me, which was very nice of him. But
it's crazy, because it's a massive shop. It was a really dead day. It was genuinely, if we'd queued, it would have been our longest queue of the day for the gift shop. And you were basically being there like, I want to give you some money, and they were like, nah.
No, I didn't understand that at all.
So bizarre.
And I couldn't even buy the hat online. That was crazy. Nemesis also... Actually, no way. There is one more fun fact here that I actually don't remember, but I know you know it, Mike. There is a wording trick that if you take a picture standing at a certain angle outside of Nemesis, it does spell something, right?
You want me to say this? Because
I don't say it's the C word, right?
Yeah.
It's not in my vernacular, but it does if you stand at a certain angle.
I just want to point out that in Britain, that word is not perceived quite as strongly as it is in America.
That's true.
Basically, there's the word containment, and it had to paint the inside of the O to make it like less obvious, because the top of the track cut off the top of the O. I'm sure you put together how that looked. But yeah, they didn't really think through the angle, and so it just became this like photo op. I just love that. Like in Magic Kingdom, you have the purple wall, and in Alton Towers, you have the C word. Like
you have your C word photo op. I thought that was hilarious. Speaking of naughty fun facts, we got one more here. Nemesis also had a world record at one point, a Guinness World Record. Do you know of this, Byron?
I think they once held a record that has been broken for most amount of naked people that have ridden.
That's correct.
A roller coaster.
At one point in 2004, Nemesis held the world record for the most naked people to ride a roller coaster, with 32 riders taking part of this funny little
Are they
endeavor.
wiping those seats after? Like,
I'm not really sure.
How do they pull this off? Like, this is talk about things that can't get pulled off in the United States.
Well, Nemesis has a sister attraction over in Thorpe Park.
Yeah, the Inferno.
Nemesis Inferno, and that actually held the record 3 months prior to that. And then Nemesis got wind of it, and then they broke it, just 3 months later. And then another ride broke that, and then eventually now the ride that holds this title is in Blackpool Pleasure Beach. It's Grand National. And has 195 people set in 2019.
So funny that competing British parks are all trying to beat each other.
Wait, is that a roller
coaster? That just says so much.
It's a roller coaster. So Guinness changed the way they measured it from the most riders to partake in the event as opposed to one ride.
Oh.
So Nemesis had 32 people on the train.
Wait, how many was it on Grand National?
195 took part.
Oh,
yeah, because I was going to say, like, those B&M trains, they have rows of 4, and I could see that, like, carrying a good amount of people. But
not 195.
Grand National is a racing coaster. So that's why because I was thinking maybe it was counting both trains, but yeah, I'm still pretty sure it needs to be multiple trains for that.
No, it's multiple
even
trains.
Though they're quite long.
Guinness changed the way they measured it because they realized, oh wow, these folks are really going to keep pushing the envelope here, which is really funny because if you look at photos of like this event or any of these events, all the people are standing in line in robes. And honestly, I don't know how I feel about getting on a roller coaster naked, something I'm not at all interested in. However, I will say something I'm very interested in is attending a theme park while wearing a robe. I love robes. I like lounging in a robe at a hotel. It's the first thing I do is I check to see if they have a robe. I don't wear robes at home, which is weird, but when I'm at a hotel, I'll put that robe on. If I could take my robe from the hotel and then walk into the theme park, incredible.
One of my big regrets of this year is I forgot that I have a Hollywood Tower Hotel robe, and I did not wear it for the Tower of Terror episode, but
That would have been fun.
that was a missed opportunity.
And that does it for the fun facts.
Oh, I got one more.
Oh, you got one more?
More historical because it's not from Reborn, but Mike, can you confirm? I don't know if you could confirm how long this existed, but there was, when it originally opened in 94, the river next to the attraction was blood red.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's correct.
And I don't think that lasted long. I'm sure it's not the healthiest of choices.
I think it lasted longer than you'd expect. I don't remember ever seeing it, but it wasn't like they did this for one season thing. It was a number of years.
Not like a Hatbox Ghost sort of.
No, it was a thing. And then I believe currently, not when we were there, Ryan, but since the river's back, but it's no longer red.
I don't recall
that's
it
bad
being
for
red.
the environment. I don't think there was any water effect at all when we were there. I think they've turned those on since.
I was so
but I could be
distracted
wrong.
by the giant fucking cavern that they had created that has a loop in
Yeah.
it that I couldn't even start to notice the water.
Yeah.
But moving on to our next section, Armchair Engineering, a new section of this show. What's one thing you would possibly do to make this attraction even better? And to this, we go to our folks over on our fourth wall at fyapod.com. This comes from Ashley Storer Smith. Their idea for this is to have Nemesis Subterra be a pre-show to Nemesis Reborn officially. It's basically that anyway, but people often skip it and go to the roller coaster, they say. I couldn't agree more. I think this is a very easy layup. Just force people to go into Subterra. I'm sure that's a controversial opinion, but I love this idea just because if you could force people to do this first,
I'm going to have to disagree on that one.
that's
Sorry,
fine.
Ashley.
That's fine. I'm a foreigner.
Mike, are you thinking rewritability? You can't marathon Nemesis that
100%.
way.
You can't marathon it, no.
100%. It's more, and I guess it's that thing of this being a regional park.
Yeah.
I can just picture, or at least it would have to be optional to opt out of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what
Like-
if it was officially part of the line, but then you could skip it if you wanted to?
Oh, then I'd 100% be in favor of it because I
Okay.
would probably do it most times,
Well,
or at
that's
least
a
I'd
good
do
compromise.
it once every trip the first time, and then maybe if I wanted to re-ride, I'd skip it. I think that it would have to be something like that for sure because I feel I mean I know that it's a thing I always think is interesting when I look at Orlando residents complaining about pre-shows on
Yeah.
Disney World rides, and I'm a bit like, this isn't designed for you.
Yeah.
But the nature of a regional park is you do need to design more for people who, even if they're not there every week, that might be going every year.
Yeah.
And even then it might slightly great. But yeah, I would love it if more people saw it as the ideal way to do it for sure. And that could be a way of, because it's a thing I remember having that thought after we did it that way, kind of looking at a map on how you would reroute it and stuff, but you would definitely need an opt-out.
All right, here's my wacky idea. I'm not very familiar with the geography, obviously, but it would be cool that if, yes, the first time you go, it's like a pre-show, like the first half of the queue is the is the Subterra.
Yeah, Subterra. Nemesis Subterra.
And then after you ride it, or after that, you have the second half of the queue that goes into the station. And then after you ride it once, you have an option to rejoin and have a reduced wait in the second half of the queue. Or you could just complete your exit.
That seems
what?
like a nightmare.
They'd have to be very strategic in knowing how many people are going through this pre-show and on average how many people are choosing to ride again.
Yeah.
Because you could just have everyone choosing to ride again, and then everyone who hasn't been on it yet that's still in the pre-show is just getting fucked.
Well, here's an interesting kind of meditation on this, because I feel like if this was officially part of the queue and this was Subterra was just now the queue and officially a pre-show of Nemesis Reborn, it would vault it up into the ranks of pre-shows on par with, in my opinion, something like Rise of the Resistance. That's how highly I think of Subterra as an experience, and it makes me wonder how many people, if they could, would opt out of the pre-show experiences of Rise of the Resistance and just go straight to the ride.
I really like Nemesis Subterra. I feel like I'm one of the biggest defenders of it, but Rise is on another level.
Nah, dude, I love
genuine.
it. Dude, it's... I think... It's hard to talk about it without spoiling it. There is something in Subterra that Rise of the Resistance's pre-show can't touch, in that it offers thrill.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? There's there's a conversation to be had that it may not be. Honestly, I do think it's as technologically advanced, because like the Rise of the Resistance little, like the transportation unit to Batu or whatever, that's just a motion simulator on like a little rotating carousel kind of thing. You're not moving that much.
To me, Rise of the Resistance, if it was just the Dark Ride section, wouldn't be as high in my head, because I feel like it's so designed for... There's very few that I would say the pre-shows are absolutely essential to the experience in the way that Rise of the Resistance is. But I do see your point. It's a thing where it would be nice somehow for most people to experience it the way you did, because I think it works so well.
Let me rephrase the question for you, and this might actually elicit a different response.
Okay.
Think about it this way. Nemesis Subterra is legitimately its own attraction. People stand in line to just experience Nemesis Subterra. That's a fact. Do you think people would actually stand in line to only experience the Rise of the Resistance pre-shows?
Like, not a long line, but they would definitely queue up for it. It's an experience.
I think when you view it that way, like, which one do you think would probably command more queue?
Oh, yeah, I would say Subterra.
That's what I'm saying. So, like, that's why it is on par with it.
Does that?
You see what I did there?
Is that more so because Subterra has more of a conclusion, whereas the pre-shows to Rise are obviously not concluded because you have to.
That's
go on
fair.
The ride
That's a
to
fair
get to
point.
it?
Yeah,
that is
I
a fair
think
point.
Subterra, and this is the thing I can't say,
Because you could say the feature that's in Subterra is in Rise of the Resistance eventually, but
it is. That's true. That actually, you're right. No,
that's
you're
a
right.
really
But
good
that's
point,
that's a good point. Yes, it is actually.
And another thing with
the
Subterra,
ride though, not the queue.
yeah,
the Subterra capacity is terrible. Like, it's so slow.
It is.
Getting people through due to the nature of the elements in there.
And there's live
And the
actors, which
staffing
I always
and live
enjoy.
actors, yeah. So Nemesis Reborn is an absolute capacity beast. I think it more is one of those things where I just want more people to know when they go to.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe this is the moment. Everyone's going to watch this podcast and be like, you know what? I'm going to go to Alton Towers. And I'm going to do Nemesis Reborn first. Nemesis Subterra first. And they're going to be like, thanks, guys. We're changing culture right now.
Here's the thing, and I was going to just point exactly out what you just said, is that there may be people that are like screaming at me that are saying this is blasphemous. You're basically redoing the attraction. I'm willing to fall on that sword and take that heat as long as it makes 10 more people do this first and then do Nemesis Reborn. And maybe that's what Ashley Storer Smith here is also riding for that as well. Because if we could just get more people to think about it at least and then do it in this order, I will be happy.
Yeah. And the amount of people I've spoken to since we did it that way round and said how much you loved it, I've been like, this is the way to do it if you're bringing
it
someone to Pass for the first time. So I'm fully on board with the emotional desire to have it this way. But I think I just go too much into the practical part of my brain that's like, no.
It would be cool if they redo Galactica and they redo some of those flat rides to also fit within this theme. If like on the park map, they were like, hey, this is the order you should do these attractions in. That would be kind of cool. And that actually probably would hurt park flow because they'd have predictability to how people are going to be standing in lines. Just thinking out loud. Anyways.
Okay, so this is, again, like the first one, I think I've ranked these from easiest to implement to hardest. And the first one, this is very much me being someone who goes there regularly. So it really bugs me. And I think it bugged me especially because I when I was there with you, there was like almost no queue. The fact you can't queue for the front. And that this isn't just me being a nerd. I think the one thing that slightly grates about inverted coasters on me is every row apart from the front has a reduced experience because you're just looking at this like quite clunky train unless you're looking downwards.
That's fair. That is fair.
So generally, I'm actually not that fussed about sitting at the front. I feel like people who care that much is more of a nerd thing. But I do think it's such a better experience at the front because you have the full visual effect. So that's my first one.
That's a great point.
You're not alone in that too. I read a bunch of trip reports from people who went to the opening day of Nemesis Reborn, and multiple people had pointed out it is a bit of a bummer that I waited that long and I couldn't queue extra. Like if I'm waiting 4 hours, why can't I wait an extra 30 to be in the front of the line? But
and
I
I'm
guess
pretty sure Nemesis Inferno has a front of line queue.
they used to have it in Nemesis apparently.
Oh, did they?
That's
interesting.
that's what I gathered from the trip reports. I could be wrong about that, but
yeah, because Nemesis Inferno very famously has one because there's a British sitcom where there's like a plot point about queuing for the front. I also, this is another one that for me is something I really love in coasters and I think would work so well here. On-ride audio would be amazing on this, and I checked that apparently Phoenix Rising, which is a B&M invert, I think is more of a family one at Bush, apparently has on-ride audio, so it's something they can do as a manufacturer.
I almost said this, but I have this in my bads. When we got in the good and the bad, I literally
already have that
I
ready.
wish they could have had on-ride audio because they have a soundtrack they've already made for it.
Exactly.
Let's use it.
So it would work so well for this coaster. The reason I think I might have considered it, maybe, but while they replaced the entire track, I do believe the trains are the same as the original. Yeah. So the other thing I have, and maybe this is going to be in your bad section, I would love if there was some kind of, if they enclosed the brake run and had some kind of button effect or moment, like story-wise, to end it. Like, you know how like Wicker Man ends? Yes. And there's like that final like moment. I would love something like that, especially when the brake run is, the most like boring part of the ride. So if you enclosed it, it would also help when it's raining that you're not just sat there getting wet, but you could do something with that.
To be fair, I kind of like the brake run. Thought it was kind of vibey. You're by that containment unit kind of thing.
You were just looking at the word and being like, yeah.
No, I was looking at just the vibes. Like you're kind of near that bus. You're just in the score. You could hear the score there. But if that was enclosed, that would be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to come up with stuff that I felt like they could implement and wouldn't be crazy expensive.
Yes.
Oh, maybe they are. I obviously don't work in the industry. I don't know how much an on-ride audio actually costs.
It must cost a lot because I feel like people would do it more. But I feel like most of the cost would be associated with the actual orchestration of the score, not so much the implementation of the speakers in the vehicles themselves. But I could be wrong about that.
When I looked it up, actually, I was surprised how few coasters have on-ride audio. In my head, it was like more of a trend, and then there was certain rides I was like, I swear that had on-ride audio, and then I realized it just had like audio played at the beginning and end, and in my head I'd added in
or
to the
even
entire
like
ride.
If it's playing through the speakers as you're going up the lift hill. I see that a lot. That happens next too.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the good and the bad. What are the good and the bad things about this ride? As always, you could chime in and agree with me or disagree with me, but I think we're all going to be pretty simpatico here. The good, look, we've already talked about it at length, but the theming of this ride is something I very much enjoy. I always appreciate when a coaster goes for any sort of theming, let alone a storyline that actually plays into the ride itself for the most part. Until we started seeing these highly themed roller coasters like Hagrid's and, Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. It was this is kind of ahead of its time, I feel like, in that sense. The queue, there are parts of it that are kind of empty, but I think the queue is incredible, and it offers some incredible views of the coaster. Like when you go up to that top portion and you're looking down at that loop, it's beautiful.
And it's intentional. It's something that I've already thought about for the test later. I feel like it's not just like, and while you're there, you can look at the coaster. It's intentionally designed to have these incredible views going around the edge of the pit.
Yeah.
Because, there isn't like Universal Studios money here to build an entire, Mario Kart, essentially a walkthrough attraction beforehand. No. But it's nice, yeah.
The whole station's amazing. The lighting package inside is crazy. I didn't catch the smell, but, maybe I just wasn't picking up on that. I don't know if that's something that they actually are still doing, but if that's the case and they actually did formulate a specific scent for this station, you gotta respect that. And the monster. It's disgusting.
It's beautiful.
Oh, man.
It's supposed to spin around.
Jesus Christ. the scariest shit.
I normally don't like screen tech, but the fact that this was like a 3D LED eyeball and it's enormous, it has different modes, it interacts with the coaster as it passes. I just thought it was all highly impressive. And even if it is a little campy, I think that's fun in the horror genre. That's kind of built into the whole kind of...
I think that's part of the appeal of this ride. Because one thing that I think it was in my bad as something that I used to think, but not. I didn't like when they changed the track and had all these veins painted on it. I was like, this looks really stupid. And then when it was all done, I was like, well, it's kind of the point. And it's all a bit silly and fun. And I love that eye edge. I think it's so much fun. I just love standing there watching it interact with the coaster.
It's amazing.
It's such a good photo op. Like, I feel like we spent like a solid 10, 15 minutes just trying to take pictures with that eye.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's so good that
it's really smart of them to do that too. Just because, like you said, we really made a point to get a picture in front of this thing. The next thing I wrote is just the lore. I love the fact that they were smart enough to make lore that wasn't airtight but left room for interpretation, because that's the only thing that really gets something to have a life of its own on the internet. I feel like is that if you don't completely lay everything out, and I think they did just the right amount. And for a company to make an original idea and have it take on a life of its own like it has is really impressive, especially now in today's day and age of theme parks where everything is around an IP. Even movies are they have to be, it has to be a pre-existing IP. So something that is just completely original through and through. And then just the terrain features, the fact that you're going through real caverns, they have these near misses that feel, it just feels like, I don't know, it's just it's different. It's different than any kind of coaster of this kind that I've been on, in the sense that it almost feels like it's one with the land.
Yeah.
It's living with the land.
It is living with the land.
Living with the land if it's slayed.
Yeah. If it's
wait, no, sorry. I know you guys like that, don't you?
I do love living with the land.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Sorry to Dallin, I disagree there, but
the soundtrack is great. And then in terms of just the features, I'm not like one to clock things like the 0G roll. I'm sure that's like, or I know when I'm going upside down, sure. But the one feature that I do love is just doing that enormous loop in that pit. It's just so fucking cool to be doing a loop in that from that vantage point, and then to go straight from the loop into a cavern. It kicks so much ass.
From what I've gathered, watching footage of this ride is, and I'll compare this to most other inverts where the common trope is they'll do some sort of turn around, twisting drop to start the ride after you disengage the lift hill, and you always go straight into a vertical loop. It's always the first move on an inverted coaster, but not Nemesis, because it has to work with the terrain, where essentially you're spending what appears to be the whole ride working your way downhill.
Yeah.
So you are picking up momentum as the ride goes. There's no major drop. It's just like sneakily gaining speed, where when you finally do hit the vertical loop, it's like towards the end of the ride, and you are at the lowest point of the ride.
Yeah.
When you hit that with all the momentum. And the fact that they hide that so well, it just, I don't know, that just seems super unique. It seems like a much more creative and fun way to experience a vertical loop.
I mean, even to end the ride, there's a corkscrew that goes essentially through 2 tunnels. And I believe it goes like over that bus. It's a crazy way to end the ride before you get into that final brake run. I don't know. It's just the layout of it. It's hard to decipher because of the terrain. So that mixed with the theming, it's such a unique experience that can't really be had at any other park. So I don't know. And that pretty much wraps up my goods. I'm sure you would have some more, Mike. But
I mean, and you've hit most of my points, to be honest. I guess building on what Byron said about I think for me, a really important thing on a coaster is like the sequencing and the pacing. And I think just the inherent nature of roller coasters often means the best bits at the beginning, because you have to like traditionally go up a big lift hill and then you have the drop, and often that's the so any coaster which feels like it sort of either keeps up that momentum or crescendos, I always have a lot of appreciation for. And I think this really nails that assignment. I think a lot of modern coasters, because like launch tech is becoming more common,
Yeah,
are really getting that. But it's older coasters, most of them, the best bits right at the beginning. This, I wouldn't say that's the case. I think it really keeps up the momentum throughout. We kind of mentioned this, but I just think the inventiveness of the whole thing, the uniqueness, how good the terrain looks, I think is incredible. I've written on my list here, I in brackets, the containment sign. That was when I was going to bring it up.
Incredible.
But this might sound like a weird thing to say, but I feel like the first, like, if I was going to sum it up in one word, what I really like about this coaster, it feels like it just has a very clear idea of what it wants to be and what it wants to achieve.
Yes.
The kind of coaster it's creating, this intense feeling, links up with the aesthetic, links up with the overall idea of this monster. It just all, it's not like, because I know you mentioned you like the lore, and you know, in the bad section, maybe we'll have a little moment where I disagree with you a little bit on that. But the broad thing is everything feels like it really naturally fits each other. Feels like a very cohesive idea and vision at play. And I think that's really cool in a roller coaster to see.
And that extends into the land. That's the craziest part to me. It's one thing to have a coaster with theming that's already kind of like a low bar to clear because not many coasters have that. But to have it already like play into the land's theming in the sense that it's telling a part of a bigger story, that's crazy to me. Because even one of my favorite coasters on Earth, Ghost Rider, it's playing into a Western theme, but it's just a general Western theme. It's not carrying out, you know, a narrative that's, you know, carried on by another attraction that's near it. So I've just never really seen anything quite like that. That's what really catches my eye about, you know, Nemesis.
Unfortunately, I can't agree or disagree with you on Ghost Rider because Accelerator, my personal nemesis, I hurt my back on, and then I couldn't go on any other coasters at Knott's.
Oh no!
So
we're covering Accelerator.
Yeah,
we just covered Accelerator.
We just covered Accelerator.
Yeah, I genuinely, it's one of my most hated coasters, not because of the experience itself, but because I have a personal vendetta against it.
That's incredible.
And I wanted to do Ghost Rider first, but it was down, so I was like, I'll just go do this other coaster, and then
was it because, did it have anything to do with you expecting a Rita style hydraulic launch, and then you ended up getting an Accelerator hydraulic launch?
I think well, it could be that. It's more I'd already kind of hurt my back a week before, got better, and then clearly wasn't as better as I thought.
Was it on the launch that it got you? Or?
I think it was on the top hat.
Whoa.
Let's move on to the bands for this.
Oh,
ride.
wait.
Unless
we're not spending enough time on the goods, I feel like. And I haven't even been on this ride. Actually, no, I want to pick your guys' brain.
Well, we
Yeah, come on.
covered a lot of
Actually-
the goods in the fun facts just because I couldn't
Yeah,
contain
but
myself.
we're not covering the layout. I want to hear your guys' takes on it if the moments that I think in the layout hit the same way in person.
Okay, you can
So,
ask.
Byron,
so for example,
a Q&A here.
So-
Byron, ask us the cues. We will
it seems to hit the helix at a point in the ride that most inverts don't hit. Like, for example, Silver Bullet at Knott's Berry Farm, it hits the helix at the very end of the ride. It's a pretty
awesome.
good and intense helix. Same with Batman. Whereas this one hits you with the helix, no joke, like 10 or so seconds after disengaging the lift hill, which I found very rare. Like at a moment where it still feels like you're moving downhill. I don't know if that is like one of the signature elements of the ride or if the helix is kind of whatever. Like, I don't know if you guys remembered.
Yeah,
like,
I know exactly the bit you're talking about. I wouldn't consider that a particularly iconic part of this coaster. I don't know if that's controversial. I feel like
it might just be the nerd in me, like fascinated with how the elevation of that helix is so high up compared to the rest of the ride, and you have so much more ground to traverse, like, and fall into.
It looks really good, like visually, especially off ride. It looks amazing, but to me, that's not.
But I guess experiencing on the ride, you're not like really hit with these crazy forces, or
I don't think so. But again, I feel like we've established that me and Ryan are just like roller coasters.
I'm there for the ride. Have you been wearing a Santa hat this entire time?
I have.
The fuck?
Merry Christmas, motherfucker.
That's crazy. The Coaster Christmas. I didn't realize that until right now. Well, let's move on to the bad here. And I don't have many, to be honest. My first one is I just wish it was a little bit longer. That's me for every coaster. I just wish it was a little bit longer. I mean, it's still pretty long. Yeah, what is it, man? 20 seconds, I think I said.
I'm sure they fit as much of it as they possibly could into that space.
And then the last one I wrote, we already talked about a little bit, which is there's a great soundtrack in the queue, but I wish it was onboard audio throughout. And that's pretty much it for my bads. I really enjoyed this coaster quite a bit. So Mike chomping at the bit here.
Okay, so it's an interesting because I feel like my first bad disagrees with your first bad in that I personally, this purely on personal taste, so I'm not even sure we should qualify this. I find it too intense for my personal taste. Like, I find it a lot. And I feel like if it was any longer, I'm not sure I could cope.
Yeah.
So, I mentioned I did it 6 times in a row. It's because I was at, I think I did 5 times in a row, but 6 times in that day. But I was at this event where they'd hired it out, so I had to get as many goes on as possible.
Yeah.
Like, most of my friends did double what I did, and I just had to, take breaks because I couldn't cope. I personally, purely on a personal taste level, it's just a bit too intense for what I like.
Oh, man.
I don't know if that counts as a bad though, because it feels like I'm the problem. It feels like a bit of a skill issue.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, God, being able to loop this would be awesome. I would want to loop it till I threw up.
Here's what I'd ask, Mike. How does Montu compare to it in regards to intensity?
I don't remember Montu well enough to tell
Because
you.
Montu is essentially on the more intense side of inverted coasters. However, it's a much longer ride.
Where's Montu?
That's Busch Gardens, Tampa.
Busch Gardens.
Nice.
Off the top of my head, this is the most intense inverted coaster I've done. Black Mamba at Phantasialand would be close, but I didn't get to do it loads of times, so I wouldn't be able to.
Another good. You know what? A better comparison might be is the Batman models. All those clones.
I was about to say,
those are rather intense.
Batman.
They're short, but they're
I was
intense.
about to say Batman. Actually, I think is a little more intense for me personally. The one even at Six Flags Magic Mountain. I don't know how that compares. I think they're all clones, right?
There's I think upwards of 12 clones of these things at this point. They're all over the Six Flags.
For whatever
parks.
reason, Batman at Six Flags Magic Mountain always makes the bottom of my feet tingle, and I actually had a brief blackout for a second or two on Blackman on Batman the last time that I went on it. I did black out for at least a second. I remember that. I remember being a little shocked by that.
Also, what I think is interesting, and this will come up later in the test, is when they knew Nemesis was going to have they were going to have to get rid of it, the original version. They did mock up a B&M invert sequel coaster to Nemesis, and it was a longer layout. And they decided they didn't think it was as good, even though it was because of the nature of this real perfected formula.
And I have to say, now I have to backtrack and go back to the goods, because I think we do have to really praise that Nemesis takes advantage of the inverted ride vehicles probably better than every other inverted coaster. I think a lot of the best are the ones that include a lot of foot chopper elements, as in all these moments where it feels like you're getting dangerously close to kicking objects around your feet. And for example, once again, Montu builds those trenches for those corkscrews, but I don't think anything from, once again, I haven't been to Nemesis in person, but nothing seems to do that as frequently as Nemesis. It feels like the whole ride you're getting foot choppers, and it's taking full advantage of being on an inverted coaster.
But it's doing it in a way that doesn't feel obvious. Even Batman, you could very clearly see the concrete trenches that they've dug out to make that.
Batman is also a clone. So Nemesis is really working with the land.
And they don't feel like they're playing it up in that sense. It really does feel like you're about to crash into rock. Which is scary, or a fucking bus or something like that. So I think it's really cool.
And you can't see that far in front of you. I understand the seating arrangement makes that difficult, but even if you're in the front row of Nemesis, it seems like when you watch those POVs, it's you can't really see more than an element or two ahead, and that just...
Yeah, I think Black Mamba at Phantasialand's the only one that somewhat does this, but from memory, I didn't think it did it as well as Nemesis does. It's definitely a very Nemesis-inspired coaster. Linking to my next bad point on here is because I know I've already addressed this. While it's great everything and it's well designed for everything down below, the fact that in front of you, and this is all inverse, this isn't particular to Nemesis, it just annoys me that you're just staring at just this hunk of metal.
You're looking at the back of everyone's seat.
Yeah.
Unless you're the front row, and as you already mentioned, you don't even get a chance. It's just randomized, right?
Yeah, exactly. When it's randomized, I find that more annoying. However, because of what we just said, I think it bothers me less on Nemesis than other inverted coasters. And this might be a bit of a controversial opinion, but I thought it was a real thing that let down Dueling Dragons when the entire gimmick was being able to see the other train. I felt like that was so good in the front and like nowhere near as good anywhere else. Like on that, it really annoyed me. To be honest, I'm not even sure if that counts. It's just me disliking like almost the genre of coaster at this point. Not disliking, just...
Yeah.
And I mentioned earlier I didn't originally like the track color, but I've changed my mind because I think I've written B-movie energy, which I think is the exact way to describe it.
Yeah.
It's like that kind of like 1950s monster is coming to get you. Which
You
is
kind of
fun.
want that in a monster movie,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Is it fair
Yeah.
to say that the lack of roar that the track produces at this point is a bad? Do you miss the roar?
No. But I not personally. I feel like that's the sort of thing where I'm a bit like, come on, guys, get over it. Personally, I'm a bit. It doesn't matter that much. I personally don't care. But
If it sounded like Riddler, I would miss it, and I would have put it in my bads.
The one thing that I've got in my kind of what I preferred versus the original is I do feel like the original had more of a almost. If you look at Forbidden Valley, especially in the early days, it's almost like Mad Max kind of vibes, like aesthetically, or the rusted metal and stuff. And while I think the execution of Nemesis Reborn in the current version is better as an overall cohesive vision, I do think I prefer the idea of the Nemesis, that aesthetic. I think it is more to my taste. But I think part of the issue I do have with the quite military sort of there's this organization that's in charge. It's because in the same park they're already doing something somewhat similar with the Smiler. That I think that it's not enough for me to dislike Nemesis Reborn or even prefer Nemesis over Nemesis Reborn. I do think Nemesis Reborn is overall a massive upgrade. I personally would have loved to see all that energy put into something that looked aesthetically a bit different, but that's maybe more my personal taste. Also, I've got some bits that I don't like. I don't like the random bits of track in the queue. I think it looks really stupid.
It does look a little silly.
And I know that's kind of an attempt to sort of put it in the ground to be like, oh, the tentacles coming out the ground, but everyone can look at that and be like, well, that's a piece of roller coaster track. It just doesn't work for me at all.
Yeah.
And I've put, and this is the thing, I really think, especially in theme park environments, I really feel like any story quotation marks elements should be show don't tell, and that pre-show kind of grates on me the way it's delivered. I think it's really
they want to train our offspring and use them for warfare. Strength and control, more like lies for control. Look, there's a reason this area is called Forbidden Valley. You need to get out of here, spread the word, and seek the truth.
I feel like there's so much else that's done so well in that land, and it feels a little spoon-feedy, and it's this slightly annoying. There's a tendency now of like that's beginning to seep into a lot of parks internationally as well. This not to sound like I don't like Universal, because I love Universal, but I really hate the you there at the back, tourist, there's a monster coming for you and we need your help, and it feels like it's slightly drawing on that energy that just makes me cringe a bit.
See, I personally am very charmed by that. I always think it's so funny, that classic on-ride video delivery. Like the pre-show video delivery is always so funny to me.
If I didn't know I was going to get chucked out of the park, I would have like jumped that fence, switched the screen off before you came around the corner. Personally,
It's pretty funny.
I personally don't like that, but I do think all of these complaints are either me just having some weird issue with
That's fair. I mean, a lot of this is personal taste.
or which I think are entirely just my taste and nitpicks.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't say any of these are like an actual significant criticism.
Yeah.
And same with your list, I think, as well. Like
No, I really don't have a lot to nitpick on this ride. I really think it's maximized what it could be. To be honest, I really do think that I believe that it has maximized the potential of what it could have been.
okay. You know what I'm going to say now?
Oh boy.
When I came on here before, I intentionally picked something that I didn't think would definitely pass because I thought it would be more fun. And I feel like I'm pretty confident right now this is going to get at least a 7 out of 10. I'd be very surprised. So I'm just going to be really explicit that I'm here, from live from London, defending the honor of one of the most iconic British attractions. I'm going to push for a 10 out of 10. That's my agenda here. I'm going to push it. I just want you to know that that's what I'm going to go for. And that's the challenge here. Because it's 100% going to pass 7 out of 10. There's no way this is going to fail.
Byron's going to be here to play defense, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm just saying
I'm not going to have a vote. I'm just going to...
Yeah, that's true. Well, you could help though.
I could massage certain situations, maybe.
Oh, I'm sure you can.
I think, Byron, your agenda should be here to protect the integrity and sanctity of the world-class test.
Yes,
that's right.
Because we know that I don't care about the sanctity of your test. I'm here to just get my agenda pushed through.
Hey, look, I feel good about our Carousel of Progress rulings.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh, good. I'm glad you do, because I went back and rewatched that recently, and I was like, this is great. I 100% stand by everything in this.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little easier to convince than Byron.
And if people disagree with us, they could make us go to court. But
that's true. We could take it to court.
Yeah.
And with
Sign up on Fourth Wall.
Let's move.
FYApod.com.
That's right. You can go over to World Class Court where we relitigate some of these bad boys. And with that, let's get to the World Class tests. This is a rubric of 10 tests painstakingly devised by Byron and myself to determine if an attraction is world class. To receive the highly coveted World Class pass, the attraction must pass 7 out of 10 tests. A score of 6 out of 10 leaves the attraction up for debate for World Class pass standing, and anything lower than 6 out of 10 is an automatic fail. But according to Mike, we won't even have to deal with that. So we'll see.
No, we're not.
We will
It's not
see.
going to happen.
To
me, a failure is going to be 9 out of 10. That's a failure.
You know what? I don't think it's that outlandish, but we'll see how it goes. You know what? Can I attempt to read these tests since I have nothing to do?
Yeah.
I'll try. Well, I wonder if I can. I wonder how well I actually know these.
You're going to try and recite it
Could
off?
you lead these off by heart? Yeah.
I don't-
You must have
I
heard
can't do that, but then again, I'm used to just reading them. So
No, I have to hear it more often than I'd like. So,
yeah.
Test number 1, the average tourist test. Would the average tourist have a hard time getting on this ride? Is there a long wait all the time? Is there a complicated queue system?
That's good. You nailed it. Yeah, that's pretty good.
That was it. Yeah.
That's pretty good. I mean, look, aside from going opening day, this is a fairly easy ride to get on. You could just walk in, you experience all the beautiful parts of the land, and then you just get on the ride. And there's really not much else to it. So this is an easy pass for me. Oh, which, by the way, then you could keep score. Oh, this is great. I'm just...
Take a vacation.
Yeah, this is so that's 1 for 1 then. Unless you disagree with me.
I mean, I've already made my agenda clear. It'd be funny if I was like, actually, it's quite hard to get on. But no, you're 100% right. I literally just wrote for this. I was like, no, like there's nothing.
There's no
to
argument you can
nitpick
make.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1 for 1. Moving on to test number 2.
Test number 2, the Leslie Stahl test. Would you be willing to wait 60 minutes for this attraction if you've already been on it once? Or if every other attraction in the park is 60 minutes, would you be willing to wait the 60 for this one?
Now this is the interesting one.
Wait.
No. I think this might be a no for me, man.
What?
Yeah.
In what world would you not wait 60 for this?
I'm going to be honest. If I had to wait 60 for something in this park, I'm probably waiting for the Curse of Alton Manor.
Over this?
I think I would. You look so confounded.
Yeah,
honestly,
sorry, I didn't even. I didn't even anticipate this one being
look,
what it felt.
I don't. I'm trying to think off the top of my head how many coasters I would actually wait 60 minutes for. That's my personal bias coming in here. I would wait 60 for Ghost Rider, just because the length, the ride ratio, the time of ride to line waiting ratio is better there.
Can I present a scenario to you?
Okay, let's have the scenario.
Because when we went,
yes,
one of the only bad things about the day was like the opening times were like ridiculously short. Like, didn't it shut at like 3?
It closed really early, yeah.
It closed really early. And I remember there was a point where we were deciding whether we wanted to do the Alton Towers Dungeons, which was a dark ride we hadn't done and was rumored to close. I think they just announced it is closed, so, which I'd never done, or get a re-ride on Nemesis. So in that situation, we chose to do a ride we'd never done before, which I think was the right decision.
It was a great ride too.
But if at that point the park was open, was open for like another hour, and every ride was an hour-long queue, we absolutely would have done Nemesis because that was the one you wanted to re-ride. Like, I'm not even arguing this one for sport. This one actually baffles me that the answer, because it's not, this is the question, if I'm correct, the question isn't what's the number one ride I'd pick at this point, it's would I wait an hour for it? And the answer is yes, right?
If you've already been on it before.
If I've already been on it before.
If you visited during peak season at Halloween where every ride's on an hour, yes, okay, you would queue an hour for Kierce. I personally wouldn't. But you'd probably also queue an hour for Nemesis. Like,
No, you're right. No, I would. No, he's right. I would. I genuinely would, because I was really thinking about it. If we're contained to this park too, yes, I would wait 60 for this, because I wouldn't wait 60 for. I certainly wouldn't wait 60 for Rita.
Well, we didn't even do that, but yeah.
Yeah, because I read about that. You told me.
When it was like breaking down, I was like, it's fine.
I forget the name of the dime coaster. I wouldn't wait 60 for that.
Oblivion?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't wait 60 for... Oh, I did like Galactic, but I wouldn't wait 60 for it.
No.
Smiler, no.
I wouldn't.
No, I really do think this would probably be the one, just because of the theming alone. And also, I would want... That would be inclusive of me getting on Subterra again, though, because I consider them to be the same ride, essentially.
Okay,
right?
So if like Subterra was on a 15-minute queue and this was on a 45-minute queue...
Okay, if Subterra
does that work?
No,
they're separate attractions.
They're separate attractions. No, I still would wait for Nemesis again.
If they took the armchair engineering segment to heart, then I feel like this potentially would be an easy pass, but
Put it this way.
It still seems like Mike's pulling you over the line here.
He is, I think, and I think what it comes down to is this, and this is, I actually do believe this. I'm just going to say it. This is my favorite inverted roller coaster that I've ever been on. So I do think that alone would make me wait the 60. The more I think about it, the more I really would be able to talk myself into being like, okay, I'll wait 60.
For me, I would wait 60 for this. And there's other coasters I prefer in this park, but in some respects, I'd almost be more willing to wait 60 for this somehow, because it's kind of one of the iconic ones.
And they tried a little bit more. They tried a little bit more.
I would do 60 for this and Wicker Man, and I would do it personally for Galactica, but none of my friends would with me, so by default, I wouldn't do it. But those are the three I would wait an hour for. Not happily, because I don't like waiting an hour for anything.
No, but I would do it if push came to shove. I wouldn't wait 60 for Wicker Man, to be honest. But
yeah, I personally would, because I really like that one, but I feel like I prefer that ride to you.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay.
I think I have actually Q60 for Wicker Man before.
Then I guess this
is the first time I did it.
This is a pass then, I guess.
Looks like a pass. 2 for 2.
Well done.
Let's go.
You made me you made me think about it, because I really had to be honest with myself.
I think that's pretty fair though.
Yeah.
Immediately crushes dreams of getting the 10 out of 10 on test number 2.
On stage 2, I was not going to back down on that.
I mean, you could have still been gone a 0.5 and then still
that's true.
But nope, alas, 2 for 2. That takes us to test number 3, the smartphone test. Does the queue of this ride have enough to keep you off your phone?
You presenting the tests has made the pressure of this feel more, which is interesting. Does it have enough to keep you off your phone? Oh boy, this one's tough, Mike.
And on average, you're around half an hour, right?
He's looking down at notes, which worries me.
I'm ready for this one. So you could go first if you want.
I'm just raw dogging this. I think, because Subterra officially is not part of the line. If it was, this would be such an easy pass.
It doesn't count. I think counting Subterra
would
as
be
the queue
would be disingenuous.
It's not the queue. No.
It's tough, because there are portions of it where I think a lot of effort was genuinely put in, namely the station, the facade being an interactive element, a truly interactive element that I feel like would actually fit within world-class standing in terms of what it's... there's not many places that have something like that. Those make me want to pass this, but then on the other hand, there are vast sections of this line that are kind of desolate.
Is there? I'm trying to remember, but I genuinely don't...
They're kind of empty.
Sorry. I'll let you say your piece first.
There's just empty areas of this line where, in between some of the scattered military paraphernalia, which I do appreciate, the military paraphernalia and all that stuff, and I do appreciate the views that you get in this ride of the terrain and just the coaster itself. Oh, man, this one's... I'm really on the fence on this one.
Yeah, you don't have to automatically agree just because I have an agenda. Just get ready.
I'd like to hear
be
your
blown
piece.
away
I'd
by
like to hear your
facts and
piece.
logic.
I'd like to hear your piece.
I've got a few separate points on this because
boy.
I guess the way I look at it, right, is if you go to a Universal Studios park and you've got these incredible queue lines that are almost walk-through attractions. I would call some of them walk-through attractions, the level of detail they have. And that is essentially the bar when it comes down to to a themed queue.
Yeah.
And I guess this is me getting a little bit defensive of, I guess, the regional park, which has less. But when I think about, I guess, queue design, the most important thing to me is, are you having a good time in the queue? So from memory, obviously, I'm not saying this would pass the world class test, but when you look at like what Walt Disney wanted to do in 1950s Disneyland, he had those switchback queues because he liked the idea that people would interact with each other. Now, obviously, we've moved beyond that, but the idea is there's a formula and a thought process to that to pass the time. And so what I think is, if I was just, say, there's a lot of roller coaster queues that I've been on that aren't very pleasant, but you can see the roller coaster and that over there. And if I was trying to force it through, I'd be like, oh yeah, and you can look at the roller coaster if you're bored. But the difference with Nemesis, it's very intentionally designed that you go around the perimeter of the pit. And so there's bits where there isn't necessarily like a prop, like a cannon or anything, but those bits are intentionally placed at the bits where you can't see the coaster as well. And every other moment, you're there watching the coaster. And I can't find the source for this, but I believe all the coaster elements, like that vertical loop, are designed to be at eye level with the person queuing, so you can like look at them and see the riders on it. So you could picture that bit in the queue where you can see the vertical loop. And so it's designed intentionally in a way that, yeah, they don't have the budget to create an entire walkthrough experience essentially for the thing, but they're like, how do we use the terrain we have to make this as entertaining as possible? So that's my broad argument. But the other argument I have is, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but when we were in the queue, I don't remember you looking at your smartphone.
Well, that's because you and I were engaged in conversation.
It wasn't.
Not everyone gets a mic from the party to stand in the queue with.
No, and it's a thing because in the back of my mind I thought one day this might happen. It was a thing I did make mental note of because you did.
Oh my god, you were setting the trap.
You did get out your phone multiple times, not to check your messages, but to take photos and videos, quite frequently, almost in the way it was intended to be designed.
This is crazy. It goes into the cliff. Oh, man. That is awesome.
You're a psychopath.
It's something I just thought about. I was like, what could this fail on? I didn't every time you're about to get in your phone suddenly point at the track. I wasn't doing that. I wasn't like manipulating the events. This is something that happens that I just made a little mental note of.
You made a note. I thought one day. No, that's fair.
I'm actually, this is out of curiosity on my end. If this doesn't pass the smartphone test, what regional coaster ever has a chance of passing this?
No, and that's kind of where I
test?
feel like I would be great. I have to grade this one on the curve of, in terms of roller coaster, pure roller coaster queues, I cannot think of many that put in more effort. Even the Nemesis Reborn signage is a 3D element on top of what appears to be a guard tower with original score accompanying it. I'm really struggling to think of other coasters that would even attempt to do this.
And on average, this is a half-hour wait?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not too egregious. So I don't.
And even though we went on a quiet day, this was one of our longer queues. Like, I'm pretty sure we were in there.
No, I didn't mind it.
You didn't complain at all.
No, I
mean, obviously you were with me, but also I'm pretty sure we were talking a lot about the coaster. We weren't just like yapping about. I mean, I'm sure we were yapping about life a bit.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anytime you're in a queue with me, it automatically passes because I'm so entertaining. I keep you on your phone. It was fair. The way you were engaging with the environment we were in. Yeah. That is my argument here.
No, I think I might have to pass it. I was already on the fence. I think you made some strong arguments, and then also Byron chiming in about the regional curve, a coaster curve, if you will. I think that has to push it over the line.
Sounds like a pass.
It is a pass.
3 for 3. Well on your way, Mike. Test number 4, the Tony Stark test.
Oh, shit.
How innovative is this attraction? Does it push theme park tech forward?
Well, it's not the first inverted coaster, so we already lost that part. Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, it uses the terrain, I suppose, but that's because it had to. I don't think it innovated in that sense that other people are replicating the terrain nature of this. You know what I'm saying? Like,
now, as someone who has not been on this attraction, but did have to do research for the history of this attraction, I feel like I'm allowed to give a little bit of input.
Okay.
No, I'm really curious to see if it's the point I have.
So this isn't the first inverted coaster. Obviously, it came shortly after.
That's right.
That being said, Alton Towers was not making a habit of creatively averting the tree line until I recall Nemesis. Even prior to that, they had, the shuttle looping coaster that was like only intended to be there temporary because it just would have been too much of a hassle always getting these, annual permission granted. And I think this attraction changed the way that not only Alton Towers decided to go about creating their future attractions, but also theme parks at large that had terrain to use to their advantage. I think it changed the way ride designers thought about constructing roller coasters and began to shift the mindset away from it doesn't have to be the biggest and the tallest. Obviously, the coaster wars were still very prominent. Many people consider Maverick to be the coaster that killed the coaster wars. But in terms of the mentality going into using terrain to its advantage, I don't know. This is very different. I mean, they use TNT to blow this shit up and like create a big hole in the ground to work this into.
But is that tech?
It's not tech, but it's highly innovative.
All right, let's hear what Mike has to say. And then
so it's interesting because that was my initial thought as well, was terrain. The fact that I just think it's so batshit using TNT to blow stuff up. But then I had the same thought that Ryan did, that there was an original. But I think, Byron, you made a really compelling point that you look at Smiler and Oblivion and all these other ones, and it's very much a going downwards. Like Smiler, they've dug a pit. Oblivion has the big hole. It's all these ideas of how can we use this, and I think it's a real inspiration. I was going to argue also it's the first, I would consider Batman the Ride a prototype of what they can do. This is the first custom B&M invert, and it's still like one of the most legendary ones. And I think there's an element of the way it sequences those events. I think that one's probably not going to win Ryan over, so I'm going to just skip past it. But I just wanted to mention it. But I put this in a group chat with some coaster nuts. I was like, guys, can anyone help me here? I need to win this one, because I think it's one of the hardest. And a friend of mine made a really good point that I was like, oh god, this is such a Ryan and Byron for your amusement thing. I'm going to make a claim, which, as far as I'm aware, is true. And I've tried to find a counter argument to it. But I would consider this the world's first themed thrill coaster. I think before this, every themed coaster was a family coaster. This predates by, I think, a year, Space Mountain from the Earth to the Moon in Disneyland Paris, which I would consider a thrill coaster. Yes. But as far as I'm aware, and Disney have done a lot since. You've obviously got stuff at like Fantasyland, Europa Park, Velocicoaster, Universal. You've got all these other ones, which these were the coasters you were mentioning earlier, Ryan, that you really like. I can't think of a ride, and this is something obviously you've been talking about so much, is something that really stands out about Nemesis, and it is obviously not the only one, but I do think it's the first. I think it paved the way. And I can't think of another one that predates it. And it surprised me.
It depends.
But I think it's true.
It depends on what you consider a thrill coaster, because Matterhorn technically would be, in my opinion, the first themed thrill coaster, because they actually described it as we need a thrill ride in this park. But thrill...
That's me using coaster term to intense, like essentially something you couldn't take your kids on.
Yeah, like a purely for like teens coaster.
I would consider Matterhorn, I would consider almost every Disney coaster, in my opinion, a family coaster. And the only ones which would be the exceptions to me is a few of the ones in Disneyland Paris, Rock and Roller Coaster. Maybe I didn't get a Dune Credit Coaster, but maybe that. I would categorize family coasters separately to thrill coasters. And I don't think, and now I think you have a lot. You have, half my favorite coasters are like, Taron, Fantasyland, Voltron, Europa Park, Ride to Happiness maybe could just about qualify as themed. Everyone talking about Velocicoaster.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mike, are you insinuating that Nemesis walked so Velocicoaster could run?
Absolutely, and I stand by that.
I don't think that's that crazy of a claim, honestly. God, that's actually a really good argument.
So shout out to my friend Jack for coming up with that one originally.
go,
Because when he
Jack.
said it, I was like, that is it. That is exactly it. You're totally right. Well, not only are you totally right, but this is something that I could just see hooking in Ryan Bergara. Because it's so you. This is what you care about, and this is the first.
I'm
combining these two separate worlds. And that's exactly what you said to me after riding it about why you liked it so much. So this is something you care about, that you're so not used to seeing roller coasters kind of theming. And the reason you're not used to it is because A, it's still not done much, and B, this is the first, and now it's become a trend. And
When did Superman open?
Well, Superman's theming sucks.
I mean, it has a pretty cool facade, though.
Oh, wait, this is 92.
facade.
So Nemesis predated Superman.
No, this is 94. It's open 94.
Oh, that's right. 92
I
was
don't
the
thi- I
first
don't think
bat-
a-
was
I-
the
I
first
don't
invert.
think-
This is,
Yeah.
94. I would say Superman was like a 95 or 96, but I'm also totally guessing.
is this in
Superman Magic Mountain.
yes.
97?
Ah, shit.
Well, Batman the Ride technically predated this, but it's cool. Just slapping a logo on something isn't theming it. That's just branding it.
Wait,
this is a whole...
Batman
Batman-
the Ride predated this because that was the original invert.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
what was the theming like in that?
Exactly the same as Magic Mountain. Like these are all like the Batman the Rides are just scattered around. They
Yeah,
have a
and that's
back.
not-
They have a
that's not
Batcave
themed.
station. That is true.
That is pretty good. It's
But it's not like a cohesive thing, is it?
You know what though? It does. It did show an attempt of hey, we could try and theme.
Yeah, but this isn't an attempt. This is actually
executed. Yeah.
No, this is. Sorry, I'm no way. I'm letting you count Batman the Ride as the first themed thrill coaster.
you could. I think you could.
It's the first brand. It's brand. It's entirely just slapping a logo on something. Like you could put a Nemesis into a Universal Park and it would not jar. If you put Batman the Ride into a Universal Park, it would jar.
I don't know, man. I think
these are all good arguments. to be
Techie,
honest.
absolutely not. Innovative, highly.
the spirit of the test, though, is theme park tech.
I'll let it be up to you. You guys,
It's
I
not-
hate that.
you can give
I
it a
think-
0.5. I think.
I think
0.5
there are two questions here. And the first one is how innovative is this attraction? The idea of like innovating like form rather than just the actual like, because
That's
otherwise
fair.
it's just giving points to essentially gimmick attractions that are just
No,
being
I agree.
world's first for the
I
sake
think
of it.
if I really was gonna be serious, I think
And Tony Stark was creative and techie.
I think that it's not so much it is half tech, but it's also innovation, in my opinion. That's how we've graded this test.
Because I think you could pass something on the theme park tech if it's like it's done the world's first.
Yeah.
Blah blah.
You could,
like,
but
is
you
it-
could also pass this, I think, in the sense that it was innovative in how it used the train and then the level of theming that it committed to in a coaster.
Yeah.
I will admit, I think it's more than Batman's is.
It's a lot more. I think.
Okay, all right, sure, fuck it, I'll pass it. I think I feel good about that.
That's a pass. 4 for 4. That takes us
I don't
to
like how
test.
quickly Byron wrote that on the clipboard. As soon as he saw me cave, he was like already writing.
Yeah, let's go.
I was clicking my pen for the last 10 minutes. Test number 5, the Hollywood test. Can this attraction
fuck.
Can this attraction be adapted for the silver screen? Does it have a comprehensible story?
This is so bizarre because this whole time I've been talking about how the story is so compelling, but that's because I really looked into it. Even when I was there, I was searching for some sort of story, and it wasn't easy. I will say that. It could be made into a story. Is it comprehensible?
This is another one where I just assumed based on the conversation we've been having for the last hour or so that you were just going to be like, yeah, I love the story. So
I
this
do
is
love the
surprising
story.
me.
I do love the story. I actually would see this movie. I would see a movie about a creature that, you know, that it's a very classic story, like an alien that has landed, whatever, makes contact, and then there is the human attempt to contain it.
Yeah.
Oh my
I
god.
don't even
Yeah.
want to argue this one hard because I feel
I'm
like
just
you
trying
know
to.
the
I'm
answer
trying to
inside
judge
of
it at the
you
face
here.
value.
Like I feel like, to be honest, I personally think. based
No,
on
do
our
I? Because
actual
I'm trying to
opinions,
know.
You think this more than I do.
I would agree with that, but I'm trying to be fair here in the sense of like, would the average person walking through this know what the fuck was going on in this ride? They do spoon feed it to you in that one pre-show scene that they do have. What are you gonna say?
Am I allowed to?
I don't know. I'm lost.
Have you said your
I'm
bit
lost.
here? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I guess this is the thing because I totally do agree with you that bringing in sort of like tie-in videos on social media and stuff actually doesn't count. In my opinion, if it's not present in the park itself, it does not count. So I totally agree with you. While that's really cool that exists for fans to go and look at, doesn't count. I totally agree with you on that. For me, to pass this test, it has to be stuff that's present in the park itself. And I guess for me, I intentionally also didn't bring that stuff up to you because, again, I wanted you to go in fresh when we went to visit it. And I just think about you enter the land, you see the stuff on the sign, the tentacles. You go in, there's a helicopter, there's the eggs there. Then we go into Subterra. We get the prequel storyline. We leave. We went and looked at the eye. We then saw all the actors wandering around in like lab coats and the protesters. Yeah. Like there's two conflicting groups. You then go on the roller coaster and experience that. And I just feel like, to me, it's one of the most richly multi-layered thing, combining so many different elements. I'm surprised you're on the fence just because you've been talking about it so much.
No, and I think you're helping crystallize a point for me here in that, like, normally at face value of this test, I would probably fail this, but because there is so much thrown at you from the moment you enter the land, it's enough for you to dig further if you care about that kind of thing. Yeah. And that's why I think it actually probably is a pass, because like it was enough for me. Like I did walk into this as the average tourist and I was able to gather what was going on and was curious about it because there was enough presented at me. Whereas the other rides, there's nothing like that. So I think I'm going to pass it.
Sounds like a pass. That's 5 for 5. I personally I'd watch the shit out of a Nemesis movie.
Yeah, I probably would.
You threw a teaser up there.
I would too. Based on the commercial alone.
Just off the vibe of it too.
Also, I love the creature design.
Oh, it'd be so creepy.
It honestly wouldn't surprise me if it happens.
The creature design is disgusting. I don't like things with a big eye, and it freaks me out.
That's interesting. I actually do think that the odds of it actually becoming a movie are stronger because Merlin is, I think, the second or third biggest theme park company in the world. I could just see them seeing that's an avenue they want to go in down the line, is leverage their IPs in other mediums, almost the inverse of what movie studios do. Yeah. If they were going to do that, Nemesis would 100% be the first one they did. There's no other one that has that level of iconography and story like elements. So
no, I agree.
I think the main reason they wouldn't do it is because it would only be known in the UK, so it would have to be a relatively low budget movie for a UK audience. But I think they absolutely, or like a TV show maybe.
If they leaned into the low budget nature though, I think it would be very fun.
Yeah, like found footage. I actually think I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. It's not even a theoretical for me. If they announced a Nemesis movie's happening, I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Nice way to make more money. Cross promote the parks. It wouldn't surprise me like Merlin Studios setting that up or something.
No, I don't think that's that far fetched either, honestly. So yeah, I feel pretty good about that one.
5 for 5. That takes us to test number 6, the Simpson test.
Oh fuck! Okay, yeah, this one's good.
How likely is this to be replaced with something new, a la The Simpsons or from Back to the Future?
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to replace this.
Well, I think it's more than that. I don't think out of every single episode I've watched of this show, there's a stronger pass for the Simpsons test than Nemesis Reborn, because they literally had to replace the entire roller coaster and they built it identically. We know the answer. The answer is yes. They could have spent that money on a new coaster that would have been more marketable, and they chose not to because it's so iconic. And that to me is the strongest pass ever, because they literally had the opportunity to spend that money elsewhere where it would have maybe been a more sensible idea. And I know they considered building a different coaster, and they chose not to because they decided it was better to keep this.
No, even going to Alton Towers, just the one time I did, I recognized that the significance of this ride to that park is on par with, what Pirates would be to Disneyland. It would be weird to replace it. So no, I don't.
How the hell do you build anything else into that landscape?
I know exactly. Right? I don't think there's a chance especially if they're building other attractions in the land around it, and this is the centerpiece. It would make no sense.
And by doing that retracking, you're essentially giving it 30 plus more years of shelf life.
And on top of that, it's not even a land based on an IP that would eventually fade over time. It's an original idea, just like Pirates, before it became a movie. But even Space Mountain or Jungle Cruise before it became a movie, Haunted Mansion before it became a movie. Like, all these were like original ideas, and those don't have a shelf life, in my opinion.
And I think also, I guess because I followed the project quite closely, retracking sounds like almost like a bit of like admin tidying up, but they literally tore out the original roller coaster and built a clone of it in the same location, which annoys people when I bring this up, because the people who like care about like counting their creds start getting in a debate about the ship of Theseus or whatever. But really, that's technically what happened in terms of actual, like they had the opportunity where Nemesis died, essentially they couldn't keep it any longer, and so they essentially decided to build an identical coaster in its place.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it's 100% like, it's not a theoretical concept. They literally were put in a position where they had to get rid of it, and they chose to rebuild it identically
at cost
from scratch.
too. At cost, £3 to £5 million was the estimated cost. That's almost half the original cost. They spent.
I'm surprised it's not more than that, to be honest.
No, for sure. So I know,
because it still requires the same level of engineering and production. The only element they're skipping over is the design element, because it's obviously already been designed.
This is a pass.
That's a pass. 6 for 6. That takes us to test number 7, the signature moment test. Can the ride hold its own without it? Is it a one-trick pony?
I think the first question is, what is the signature moment?
No, that'd probably be the loop for me. I mean, it's the most iconic moment from the outside.
I would disagree personally. I think it's the 0G roll over the eye with the when you like go into the smoke.
Yeah, I think like.
Well, yeah. How could we forget the smoke tunnels? There's smoke tunnels on this ride. We didn't bring that in the good. That's kick ass.
Yeah, and now there's this, and there's also the smoke effect when you go over the station. The Nemesis creature like reacts as the train goes over.
It's pretty awesome.
And blows out smoke at the people on the ride, and it's so good from both the off-ride position and the on-ride position. To me, at least in Reborn, because of the whole package element, that to me feels like the signature moment.
Yeah.
But I think you could make an argument for the vertical loop, because that was the other one to me. The middle of the pit, really going up, the way you can see it from the queue. It's between those two for me.
It's such a twisting, winding ride where you can't really predict what's going to happen next because of just the lack of visibility from the terrain, not just because of the limitations of a inverted roller coaster, that I do feel like it's a pretty well-versed experience. God damn, I think this one's a pass too. Fuck.
I think this one's quite an easy pass, because I think there's a lot
I
of
don't
rides
quite
on Alton
easy. Let's
Towers
not
that
get crazy.
wouldn't. I mean, Alton Towers, I'm like, there's so many rides which do feel like one-trick ponies, and this one really doesn't. Well, the fact we can't even decide what the signature moment is helps, because it's...
Man. I'm so scared this is going to get 10. I'm terrified. All right, let's go, Byron.
So that's another pass. 7 for 7. We are going to move over to test number 8, but not before we take a quick commercial break to thank our sponsors. And we're back. Test number 8, the premature detraculation test. Does this ride finish too soon?
So we've already disagreed on this, so I guess it's
Look,
going back to it.
I got to stick to my guns. I think it could be longer. I do. But
So are you left unsatisfied?
Honestly, a little bit. Just a little bit. I just wish it was a little bit longer. Oh, man, people are going to fucking be so pissed at me for that, because that one is so personal preference. And I think in the grand scheme of other inverted coasters, or just coasters in general, a minute 20 is not that bad.
Personally,
It's
I
not
really
a
hate
minute
it.
20.
No, but no,
Wait, that's
Prime
including
ride
lift,
time,
right?
there's no way.
no,
it's a minute 20.
including that's including lift.
Yeah, I was about to say it's not a minute 20 after the lift hill. But I don't think that it's too short. I mean, I already said that I personally find it too intense. That doing it twice in a row really actually is too much for me. I feel like when I guess I was talking about this earlier, the sense of it being this relentless, really intense thing that really, and how I really like that links to the aesthetic and the story and the name and stuff. I would be worried about extending it and losing that momentum, and the fact that they did consider that in the process of switching from Nemesis to Nemesis Reborn and decided, no, actually this is gonna not make it a better ride.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't think it's I think it would be worse if it was longer. It depends what they did, I guess. But I don't think it would be a better roller coaster.
I think
for what it's trying to do.
Oh man.
Because the pacing is one of the best things about it, and I'd be worried about messing it up. If I was put in charge of it, if it was 2021 and I was put in charge of this project, and they were like, but insisted it had to be a new coaster, that would be one of the things I'd be worried about is if you outstay your welcome because the original is so well paced and like goes into each element so quickly.
I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place here because on one hand, I think it's a decent length, but on the other hand,
It's very similar to Batman the Ride in terms of length.
yeah. On the other hand, I've already put in my bad that I wish it was a little longer, but at the same time,
are you left unsatisfied?
That's the part where I'm stuck. Am I left unsatisfied? And I think the answer to that is no. I actually am satisfied by the ride, and that's where I'm a little stuck. Is that I do wish it was a little longer, but at the same time, I'm not unsatisfied. Like
You could be more satisfied.
I could be a little bit more satisfied, but I'm pretty satisfied.
What's a really good example, because I know you did an episode on this recently. Obviously, I mentioned earlier that I don't like Accelerator at knots, but even taking outside my vendetta of it, I personally think Stealth at Thought Park is a better coaster, even though it's only like 5 seconds long, because it just focuses on what it wants to do and does it really well, where Accelerator just keeps meandering for ages.
Mike, are you insinuating that Accelerator would be better as a 10-second ride?
No, I'm just saying Stealth, which is a 10-second ride, I think is a better experience because of the way it's designed. But that's personal taste. I know that's a bit of a hot take, but I think the same with Oblivion being a better dive coaster than Sheikra. Because I think it's about what you're attempting to do.
Because it's a 10-second ride.
No, I just think it's about building up that fear. I think it's kind of similar to like a drop tower.
That's fair. Well, once again, I haven't been on Oblivion.
Yeah, but these are quite controversial opinions sometimes on that's quite an extreme example as well. This obviously isn't a short coaster. This actually is fairly lengthy.
I actually think
long.
In my heart of hearts, this is a pass, and I'm disappointed that I didn't fail one of the other ones. And we're too far past it now. Because I do think this is a pass. If I really am being honest with myself, it's a pass. And I'm terrified because I was really sitting here thinking about the next two tests. I think it's a pass. Unfortunately, I do think that's a pass.
All right.
Fuck you.
That's an 8 out of 8.
I can't read Byron's face. I think he's delighting in the fact that this is going to happen, but it really didn't happen on his watch, technically.
That's 8 for 8. Short ride, long episode. Test number 9, the exit hall test. Do you see people be physically excited getting off this ride? Do you have bounce after this ride?
Yeah, you do. It's easy.
Okay. I was worried for a moment you were going to start denying it, and I was like,
"No, I can't. I got to be honest."
I've never seen someone bounce off that ride more than you, Ryan. You were so into
I was fucking stoked.
That's a pass. That's 9 for 9.
Yeah.
And that takes us to test number 10, the fine wine test. Wow. I wonder how this is going to go. Has it aged well? Has your opinion of the attraction appreciated or depreciated since your first experience? Or if it's a new ride, do you believe it will age well?
Well, personally, I planted the seed really early on with this one, where I mentioned that I originally didn't get it and then grew to love it because I realized how good it was. And the fact well, you know what? Do you want to learn a fun stat, which I actually didn't throw in earlier? Do you guys know CaptainCoaster.com, which is when like nerds rank coasters and you can see where they're ranked in the world?
No, I actually don't. No. What?
Oh, it's really interesting to go and like look at like rankings by nerds. And this, I believe is like around, I think it's like just out of the top 50 worldwide, but there's not a single coaster above it that's older.
Yeah.
And almost every single coaster in there is from the 21st century. I think there's like 2 that are also from the 90s.
It's a pretty good fact.
So that was like the fun bit of trivia there. But so, I don't know. Ryan,
he's just taking a victory lap now.
if you want to fail it,
I can't fail it. You know I can't fail it because it's a ride that literally existed for what, 94, 30 years, and they rebuilt it exactly as it was and just improved it and then made it somehow better. I don't see how you failed this. I'm trying to think of other coasters we've passed with 10 out of 10. The first one that comes to mind is the Mummy. And I was thinking, does this stack up with the Mummy in Orlando? And I actually think it does. So I don't feel too bad.
Yeah, I would maybe say I prefer. I don't know. It's so different.
All right, let's go. I don't know. I just don't think it's crazy to have them in the same sentence. So
yeah,
it's not as egregious as I originally thought.
Yeah, I mean, Revenge of the Mummy is a dark ride and a coaster at the same time. Like obviously this is a better coaster than the Mummy, but
Yes.
then the Mummy has the whole package. But then Subterra, you know, kind of as a package as well. So
And we
and
had-
you said that's Rise of the Resistance level.
Here's
so.
the thing. I will honestly say I did not let my love of Subterra leak into my rankings of this test. If I had, I would say this is such an easy 10 out of 10 that I don't care. But
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to do that, so...
I think one of the funniest things about this like little war we've just had is I'm pretty sure, Ryan, you like this roller coaster more than I do. Like, I think you have more love for this roller coaster than I do.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I think that you're right.
You really, I mean,
I
the
think you're
amount
right.
of times I see you wear that t-shirt like it's your second skin.
I do love this ride a lot.
Yeah.
But
I wear this t-shirt like it's my second skin.
Oh, thank you very
We're all friends here, am I right?
Actually, let me get my clipboard back, so now
Oh,
we can
yes.
end. That's the end of the show.
Yeah, I didn't need. They didn't need this for the end. It's a 10 out of 10, a world class, not just world class attraction, an 100%
Oh, boy.
world class attraction.
I'm sure we'll hear about this in court.
And you know what? Potentially, I mean, once again, I have really no opinion.
Oh, shut the hell up, Byron.
Considering I've never been on the ride.
Unbelievable.
I think time flies extra fast when you watch the POV videos.
Yeah.
So
You know what would make a really fun, like court session?
What-
is Byron, after you visit the UK, like, and
Yeah, that's
we
true.
Go,
We can-
we'll go
Yeah,
on
we could-
Nemesis
yeah.
together, and then you can decide whether I absolutely pulled a blind on Ryan or not, for sure.
That's true. That's a good point.
I think that would be the
That would be a
fairest way to
Nemesis
to,
Reborn reevaluated.
in the kangaroo court.
Yeah.
There's no denying that it's world class. I do
No,
feel that people
that's
from
for
all
sure.
around the globe
That's
want to
for sure.
experience it. 10 out of 10, you know, as far as today goes in this particular moment, Nemesis Reborn, enjoy it. It's a 10 out of 10. And Mike, once again, you had a goal. You came in from across the world virtually to stake your claim as one of the best persuaders on this podcast.
Yeah. Next time I'm gonna have to go for like a 0 out of 10 or something. I need to like achieve every possible goal on this.
Just breaking our rubric into pieces.
Yeah, it's... I think I feel okay with it. Anyways,
Look at your lovely t-shirt. You love this ride.
That's true. I do love this ride. And with that does it for this episode of For Your Amusement. If you're watching, make sure to like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, or if you're listening, please rate the podcast 5 stars and subscribe as well. And consider supporting us again by joining our fourth wall and becoming a park hopper, as we're calling it, by heading to fyapod.com, as mentioned up top. It'll help us keep this madness going, and you'll get up to 3 monthly bonus shows in addition to the free main show you just listened to. And you'll also find our merch there as well. And thank you to those who are already park hoppers over there at fyapod.com. And for you audio listeners, here's 10 names of e-ticketers we'd like to thank. Planet Atcon, Joshua Schwob, Cassie Corolla, Casey Wolves 94, Kira 3159, Maria, Universally Bedford, IE Pinball, Gamer D47, and Abby. Follow the pod socials at fyapod everywhere. Thank you again, Mike, for joining us.
I love that. That was so much fun.
Do you have anything to plug right now while we're still here?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, I have a YouTube channel where I do video essays. My latest one is another spicy take, how Disney ruined the Tower of Terror, particularly looking at the Paris version, but also bringing in like the California Guardians of the Galaxy and just Drop Towers in general. Ryan, I know is something that I think I mentioned to you was in the works, and you called me delusional. And it was very satisfying to see the comment section be won over so strongly.
I haven't seen that one yet, and I'm gonna have to go check it out because that does sound ridiculous again.
But I almost don't want you to watch it because I know you love the Paris version of the ride.
I do.
I don't want me to make you not like it as much.
I know you have a very high success rate of persuading his opinion.
Yeah,
That's true.
I had a friend text me being like, I love this ride and you've ruined it for me. And I'm like, I'm sorry.
Maybe I won't watch
I can't
the video.
help it.
You have too much power.
Yeah, maybe don't watch it.
Which, by the way, you went on the Disney Sea version. We don't have to spoil any of that.
Yeah,
Oh my god, yeah, you went to Disney Sea. Okay.
It was awesome. We'll probably talk about that at the FYI pod. But anyways, thank you guys for spending your time with us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you all on the next ride. Bye-bye.